Blood doesn't wash off marble as easily as you'd think. Lena Virelli learned that the night Roman Calvetti put a bullet through his own lieutenant's skull. Right there in the cathedral, stained glass exploding like fireworks, her wrists still bleeding from the chains. She'd been kidnapped, betrayed, used as bait to destroy the most dangerous man in New Avalon. And when Roman finally found her, when his eyes met hers across that blood-soaked altar, she realized something terrifying. He would burn the entire city down for her. This is the story of a server who fell in love with a king, and the empire they built on ashes. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button, and buckle up, because what comes next is going to hurt. The rain came down like God had given up on New Avalon entirely. Lena Virelli's shoes were leaking. Not just damp, leaking, each step producing a wet squelch that echoed against the marble floors of the Obsidian Tower's 63rd floor. She'd worn her only pair of decent heels, the black ones with the scuffed toe she always angled away from customers, and now even those were betraying her. Water dripped from her uniform's hem, leaving a trail behind her like some pathetic breadcrumb path leading straight back to the service elevator where she belonged. She didn't belong here. The Blackthorn Foundation Gala wasn't for people like her. It was for men in $15,000 suits who smelled like cedar and casual cruelty, for women draped in diamonds that cost more than Lena's entire bloodline would earn across 3 generations. The ballroom stretched out before her like something from a fever dream, crystal chandeliers the size of compact cars, tables laid with roses that had been flown in from Ecuador that morning, champagne towers that cost more per bottle than her monthly rent. Lena hoisted the silver tray higher, her shoulders screaming in protest. 3 more hours. Just 3 more hours and she'd collect her $200 in cash. Under the table, no taxes, no questions. And maybe, she could cover part of her mother's medication this month. The insurance company had denied the claim again. Stage 4 cancer apparently didn't qualify as medically necessary treatment in their book. Breathe. Just breathe. Champagne? She forced her face into something resembling a smile as she approached a cluster of women who looked like they'd been carved from ice and expensive resentment. One of them, blonde, skeletal, dripping in emeralds, glanced at Lena like she'd just tracked dog shit across a white carpet. "Is that Veuve Clicquot?" "Yes, ma'am. I specifically requested Dom Perignon." Lena's smile didn't waver. It never did. That was the trick to surviving in service. Smile while they cut you, smile while they complained, smile while they reminded you that you were nothing more than moving furniture with a pulse. "I'll check with the bar, ma'am." "Don't bother." The woman turned away, conversation already moving on to something about a villa in Tuscany and whether the renovations were worth the hassle. Lena moved through the crowd like a ghost, invisible except when needed. She'd perfected the art of disappearing in plain sight, eyes down, posture deferential, existing only in the periphery of other people's important lives. Around her, New Avalon's elite celebrated themselves with the kind of shameless self-congratulation that only came from never having to choose between groceries and prescriptions. The Blackthorn Foundation. What a joke. Lena had looked them up before taking the gig. They donated exactly $12,000 to local charities last year while hosting 4 galas that cost a combined $2 million. But they'd gotten their tax breaks and their photo ops, and that's what mattered in a city where image was currency and truth was whatever you could afford to make it. "Excuse me?" A hand shot out, grabbing a champagne flute from her tray without looking at her. The man, silver-haired, red-faced, reeking of scotch, didn't even register her existence. She was just the tray, just the mechanism that delivered alcohol. Her feet were killing her. The blister on her left heel had opened up an hour ago, and she could feel blood mixing with rainwater in her shoe. She'd wrapped it in toilet paper during her 1 bathroom break, but that had dissolved almost immediately. 3 more hours, $200. Her mother's pills cost $97 for a 2-week supply. Do the math. Smile through the pain. Survive. The ballroom opened onto a series of balconies overlooking the city. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, New Avalon sprawled out like a wounded animal, all neon and shadows, wealth stacked on top of poverty, stacked on top of corruption so old it had fossilized into tradition. The rain hammered against the glass, distorting the lights below into abstract smears of color. Lena's tray was empty. She needed to circle back to the service station, reload, and dive back into the crowd. But her feet wouldn't move. Her shoulder was on fire. Her head was pounding from dehydration and stress, and the particular exhaustion that came from being poor in a room full of people who'd never been anything else. Just 1 minute. Just one goddamn minute. She slipped toward one of the balcony doors, nudging it open with her hip. The rain hit her immediately, cold and brutal, and so much better than the suffocating perfume and false laughter inside. The balcony was small, clearly not meant for guests. No furniture, no decorations, just bare stone and a waist-high railing overlooking a 63-story drop. Lena set the tray down and pressed her palms against the railing. The metal was freezing, rainwater streaming over her hands. Below, the city pulsed and breathed and destroyed people like her every single day without even noticing. Rough night? Lena spun around, her heart launching into her throat. A man stood in the doorway. Tall, at least 6'3", with dark hair slicked back from a face that looked like it had been carved by someone who understood violence intimately. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes so dark they were almost black. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like a weapon, perfectly tailored, obscenely expensive. A scar ran from his left eyebrow down to his cheekbone, a thin white line that somehow made him more dangerous rather than less. But it was the way he stood that made Lena's instincts scream, absolutely still, completely calm, like a predator that had already calculated every possible outcome and decided she wasn't worth the energy to kill. "I'm sorry." The words came out automatically. "I didn't mean to, I was just catching your breath." His voice was deep, controlled, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Old money mixed with something rougher underneath, like expensive whiskey poured over gravel. Smart. That circus in there would suffocate anyone with a functioning brain. He stepped onto the balcony and Lena instinctively moved back. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Men like this noticed everything. "You're one of the servers." Not a question, an observation. "Yes, sir." "How much are they paying you?" The question caught her off guard. What?" "Tonight. How much?" $200. Something flickered across his face. Amusement? Disgust? It was gone before she could identify it. "Cash?" "Yes, sir." "Under the table?" "Yes, sir." He pulled a cigarette case from his jacket. Real silver, engraved with initials she couldn't make out in the rain. "They're robbing you." "It's better than nothing." That's what people say when they've forgotten they deserve better. He lit the cigarette with a matching lighter, the flame briefly illuminating his face. Those eyes. Jesus Christ, those eyes looked like they'd seen things that would break normal people. "You smoke?" "No, sir." "Smart." He exhaled, smoke mixing with rain. Terrible habit. "My father smoked 3 packs a day. Died at 52. Heart attack. Though in his case, it probably had more to do with the enemies than the nicotine." Lena didn't know what to say to that. She shouldn't be out here. She should grab her tray and get back inside before someone noticed she was missing. But her feet wouldn't move. There was something about this man that pinned her in place, some gravitational pull that had nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with pure instinctive recognition of power. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lena." "Lena." He repeated it like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. "You're tired, Lena." "I'm fine." "You're exhausted. You've got a blister on your left foot that's bleeding through your shoe. Your right shoulder is compensating for something, old injury or new stress. I'd guess new stress from the way you're holding that tray. And you haven't eaten today because you're running on coffee and adrenaline and whatever keeps people like you upright when the world's trying to knock you down." Lena stared at him. "Who the hell are you?" The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Almost. Someone who recognizes desperation when he sees it. "I'm not desperate. Everyone's desperate. Some of us are just better at hiding it." He took another drag. "Why do you need the money?" "That's none of your business." "No, it's not. But I'm asking anyway." The rain was coming down harder now, soaking through Lena's uniform, plastering her hair to her skull. She should walk away. Every instinct she'd honed growing up in New Avalon's gutters was screaming at her to walk away from this man, because men who radiated this much control, this much contained violence, were never safe. But she was so tired of being safe. "My mother has cancer," she heard herself say. "Stage 4. The treatment she needs isn't covered by insurance, so I work 3 jobs and I still can't cover it. And in 6 months, maybe less, I'm going to watch her die because I wasn't good enough to save her. That's why I need the money, sir. That's why I'm out here in wet shoes serving champagne to people who spend more on a single dinner than I make in a month. He didn't react, didn't offer sympathy or platitudes or any of the empty words people usually threw at tragedy because they didn't know what else to do with it. He just stood there smoking, studying her like she was a puzzle he was taking apart piece by piece. What kind of cancer? Pancreatic. Where's she being treated? Mercy General? That's a shit hospital. It's what we can afford. Then you can't afford much. He finished the cigarette and crushed it under his heel. How old are you? 26. Father? Gone. Dead. I don't know. Does it matter? No. He moved to the railing beside her, close enough that she could smell him. Expensive cologne mixed with something darker, coppery, like old money and fresh blood. The foundation hosting this circus, you know what they really do? Avoid taxes? This time he did smile, briefly, coldly. Money laundering. The chairman, Gregory Blackthorne, the man currently telling that group of sycophants about his yacht, he's been funneling cartel money through this organization for 6 years. The FBI knows. The DA knows. Nobody does anything because Gregory has recordings of half the city council doing things that would end their careers in particularly spectacular fashion. Lena's pulse quickened. Why are you telling me this?
You're
standing out here in the rain instead of inside pretending to give a damn about their problems. That tells me you're smarter than most of the people in that room, and I value intelligence. I still don't know who you are. Roman Calvetti. The name hit her like cold water. Oh shit. Everyone in New Avalon knew that name. You didn't grow up in this city without hearing whispers about the Calvetti family. Old money wrapped around older violence, legitimate businesses built on foundations of blood and broken bones. Roman Calvetti owned half the waterfront, 3 casinos, and more politicians than most people owned shoes. He was the kind of man newspapers referred to in carefully neutral language, the kind of name that made prosecutors suddenly decide to retire early, the kind of man you didn't talk to on a balcony in the rain if you had any sense of self-preservation. I should go back inside, Lena said. Why? Because I need this job. Do you? He turned to face her fully, and Jesus, he was tall. $200. That's what this job is worth to you tonight. I can have $10,000 in your account before midnight. $20,000 if you need it tomorrow. In exchange for what? Nothing. He said it so simply, so matter-of-factly, that it took her a moment to process. Your mother needs treatment. I can provide it. Better hospital, better doctors. The kind of care that might actually give her a chance instead of just prolonging the inevitable. Nobody gives away that kind of money for nothing. You're right. I'm not giving it away. I'm investing it. In what? You. The balcony door opened behind them. A woman in a blood-red dress stepped out. Impossibly beautiful, impossibly cold, with the kind of face that launched both careers and restraining orders. She looked at Roman with obvious familiarity, then at Lena with the kind of contempt usually reserved for gum on expensive shoes. Darling, they're about to start the auction. Gregory's been looking for you. Tell Gregory I'll be there when I'm ready. Roman didn't look at her, didn't even acknowledge her presence beyond the words. The woman's jaw tightened. Of course. She disappeared back inside, the door closing with a decisive click. Your girlfriend seems pleased, Lena said. My headache. There's a difference. He pulled a business card from his jacket and held it out. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. I need an executive assistant. Someone smart enough to navigate complexity and desperate enough to take risks. You start Monday. Salary is $200,000 a year, plus housing, plus your mother's medical care at Northbridge Medical Center under Dr. Sarah Chen, who happens to be the best oncologist on the East Coast. Lena stared at the card like it might bite her. You don't know anything about me. I know you're working 3 jobs and still drowning. I know you're standing in the rain with bleeding feet because you need $200. I know you looked me in the eye and didn't flinch when I told you who I was. That's enough. Why me? Because everyone else in this city wants something from me. You're the first person in years who's looked at me like I'm just another asshole in an expensive suit. He pressed the card into her hand. Think about it. But don't think too long. Your mother doesn't have time for hesitation. He walked back inside, leaving Lena alone on the balcony with a business card and a choice that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff in the dark. She looked down at the card. Roman Calvetti. Calvetti Enterprises. A phone number. Nothing else. The rain kept falling. Inside, the gala continued, laughter and music and the soft clink of crystal against crystal. Lena's tray sat abandoned by the door, water pooling around its base. She should throw the card away. She should walk back inside, finish her shift, collect her $200, and forget this ever happened. Roman Calvetti wasn't offering her a job. He was offering her a cage lined with silk and money, and everyone knew what happened to people who got too close to men like him. They disappeared. They changed. They became something else entirely. Lena looked out at the city one more time, then tucked the card into her bra and went back inside. But it's a second chance. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Lena's feet moved on autopilot. Tray up, smile on, exist in the margins. But her mind was somewhere else entirely, replaying the conversation on the balcony over and over like a song she couldn't get out of her head. $200,000 a year. Your mother's medical care. Housing. It was too good. It was insane. It was the kind of offer that came with strings so thick they could hang you. Around midnight, the gala started winding down. The auction had raised $3 million for youth enrichment programs, which Lena was fairly certain was code for Gregory Blackthorne's yacht maintenance fund. The guests began trickling out in waves of expensive perfume and self-satisfaction, collected by town cars and private drivers who'd been waiting in the rain for hours. Lena was carrying a final load of dirty glasses back to the service elevator when she heard the crash. It came from the main ballroom, the distinctive sound of breaking crystal followed by a woman's shriek. Lena's stomach dropped. Breaking things at events like this was a fireable offense, and she couldn't afford to lose this connection. The catering company she worked for did most of the high-end events in the city. Lose them, and she lost 30% of her income. She hurried toward the sound, her wet shoes slipping on marble. The scene that greeted her was worse than she'd imagined. One of the other servers, Marcus, a kid barely 20 who was working his way through community college, stood frozen in the center of the room, surrounded by what had been a champagne tower. Easily, 100 glasses shattered across the floor, champagne spreading in a golden puddle that was already seeping into the antique Persian rug beneath. And standing directly in the splash zone, champagne dripping from her designer gown, was the woman who'd interrupted Lena's conversation with Roman, the one in the blood-red dress. Up close, she was even more striking and even more furious. "You idiot!" she shrieked, her voice cutting through the scattered conversations like a knife. "Do you have any idea how much this dress costs?" Marcus looked like he wanted to dissolve into the floor. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I didn't see—" "Of course you didn't see, because you people never look where you're going, do you?" She turned to the small crowd that had gathered. "This is unacceptable. I want him fired, immediately. And I want the catering company's insurance information because if they think they're not paying for this dress—" "Vivian," the voice cut through her tirade like a blade through silk. Roman Calvetti stepped into the circle, his presence immediately shifting the energy in the room. People actually took a step back, unconsciously, instinctively. Vivian's expression flickered, anger, attraction, something else Lena couldn't identify. "Roman, this is ridiculous. Look at what he did. He made a mistake." Roman's tone was perfectly even, perfectly controlled, which somehow made it more menacing than if he'd been shouting. "Accidents happen. Not to a Valentino gown, they don't. Send me the bill." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point, Vivian?" He moved closer to her, and even though his posture remained relaxed, there was something predatory about it. "You want an apology?" He apologized. "You want money?" "I'll pay for the dress." "You want him fired?" "That's not going to happen. So what exactly are you still doing here making a scene?" The room had gone absolutely silent. Vivian's face flushed. "You're defending the help now?" "I'm stopping you from embarrassing yourself." His eyes flickered to the crowd, then back to her. "Go home, Vivian. Sleep off whatever you've been drinking. We'll talk tomorrow. It wasn't a suggestion. Vivian looked around the room, seeming to finally register the audience. Her jaw tightened. Fine. She grabbed her purse from a nearby table and stalked toward the exit, heels clicking against marble like gunshots. The crowd dispersed quickly after that, everyone suddenly very interested in being somewhere else. Within minutes, the ballroom had mostly cleared, leaving just the catering staff and a few stragglers. Roman turned to Marcus, who looked like he was about to cry. You're fine. Clean it up and go home. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Roman's eyes found Lena across the room, held there for a moment. Then he walked away without another word, disappearing into the elevator bank with two men in dark suits who'd materialized from nowhere. Marcus grabbed Lena's arm. Holy shit. Holy shit. That was Roman Calvetti. Do you know who that is? Yeah, Lena said quietly. I know who that is. He just saved my ass. Vivian Marchetti would have had me blacklisted across the entire city. Her father owns half the restaurants in New Avalon, but Roman fucking Calvetti just told her to shut up and she actually did it. Lena helped Marcus clean up the broken glass, her mind racing. She'd watched Roman shut down that situation with nothing but his presence and a few carefully chosen words. No threats, no raised voice, just absolute unquestionable authority. That was power, real power. The kind that didn't need to justify itself. By the time they finished cleaning, it was almost 2 a.m. The catering manager handed out cash payments in a back hallway, $200 each, just as promised. Lena folded the bills carefully and tucked them into her bag next to her phone, which had 3 missed calls from the hospice nurse. Her stomach clenched. She called back immediately. Mrs. Patterson? It's Lena. Is everything? Your mother had a rough night, honey. Mrs. Patterson's voice was gentle, which made it worse somehow. Nothing critical, but her pain levels have been elevated. Dr. Morrison increased her morphine dosage, but it's only going to help so much at this stage. You should try to visit tomorrow if you can. I will. Thank you for calling. Of course, honey. You try to get some rest. Rest. Right. Lena took the subway home because she couldn't afford an Uber. The train was mostly empty at this hour. Just a few exhausted night shift workers, and one guy passed out across 3 seats, drooling onto his jacket. She sat by the window and watched the city blur past, a smear of lights and shadows and lives she'd never touch. Her apartment was in Ashford, one of those neighborhoods that developers hadn't gotten around to gentrifying yet. 600 square feet, 4th floor walk-up, radiator that clanked like it was actively trying to summon demons. But it was hers, sort of. The landlord was only 3 months away from evicting her for missed rent, but that was a problem for future Lena. She kicked off her shoes the moment she got inside, peeling off her wet uniform and leaving it in a heap by the door. Her feet were raw, the blister on her heel angry and weeping. She cleaned it mechanically, wrapped it in fresh gauze, and collapsed onto her bed without bothering to change into pajamas. The business card sat on her nightstand, gleaming in the light from the street. Roman Calvetti. Lena picked up her phone and Googled him. She'd heard the stories, but stories were one thing, facts were another. Roman Calvetti, age 41, CEO of Calvetti Enterprises, a conglomerate with fingers in shipping, real estate, entertainment, and a dozen other industries. Net worth estimated somewhere north of $8 billion. No wife, no public relationships. His father, Victor Calvetti, had been found dead in 1998, officially ruled a suicide, though the rumors suggested otherwise. Roman had inherited everything at 23 and had spent the next 18 years building an empire that made his father's operation look like a lemonade stand. There were photos. Roman at charity events, always alone or surrounded by politicians and business leaders. Roman cutting ribbons at new developments. Roman shaking hands with the mayor, with senators, with people who should have known better than to be photographed with him. And there were the other stories. The ones that didn't make it into the business section. Warehouses that burned down after their owners refused to sell. Witnesses who suddenly couldn't remember what they'd seen. Prosecutors who dropped cases right before trial. A journalist who'd been investigating the Calvetti family and had ended up in the hospital with injuries that were officially labeled a mugging gone wrong. Roman Calvetti was dangerous. Everyone knew it. Nobody could prove it. And he'd just offered Lena $250,000 and her mother's life in exchange for being his assistant. She should sleep on it. Should think it through rationally, weigh the pros and cons, maybe talk to someone whose judgment she trusted. But Lena's mother had maybe 6 months left, maybe less. And rational thinking didn't cure cancer. She pulled up the number on the business card and typed out a text message before she could talk herself out of it. "This is Lena from the Gala. I'd like to discuss your offer. When can we meet?" She hit send before she could delete it. The response came back 90 seconds later. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. The address below. Come alone." An address in the Harbor District, the expensive part, where old warehouses had been converted into luxury lofts and entire blocks had been bought up and transformed into playgrounds for people who thought affordable meant under 2 million. Lena set her phone down and stared at the ceiling. Her heart was pounding. Her hands were shaking. She'd just made a deal with the devil. Or maybe she'd just made the first smart decision of her entire life. It was impossible to tell the difference anymore. But Lena didn't sleep. She lay in bed watching the ceiling, listening to her neighbor's TV through the thin walls, and thought about all the ways this could go wrong. By the time the sun came up, she'd mentally listed 47 different scenarios, approximately 46 of which ended with her dead or worse. But there was one scenario where her mother lived, and that was the only one that mattered. She showered, changed into the only professional outfit she owned, black slacks and a white blouse, both from Target, both showing their age, and caught the bus toward the Harbor District. The address Roman had given her was in a building called Meridian Towers, one of those glass and steel monuments to excess that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought subtlety was for poor people. The lobby was all marble and modern art, and a security desk staffed by men who looked like they moonlighted as professional leg breakers. Lena gave her name to the guard, who made a phone call, nodded, and directed her to a private elevator that required a key card to operate. "Top floor," he said, handing her a temporary card. "Don't stop anywhere else." The elevator moved so smoothly she barely felt it. Classical music played softly through hidden speakers, something baroque and complicated. The doors opened onto a private foyer with exactly 2 doors. One was clearly the penthouse entrance. The other was unmarked. Before Lena could decide which one to approach, the penthouse door opened. Roman stood there in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, no tie, looking like he'd just walked out of a photo shoot for powerful men who could definitely kill you. His hair was still damp, suggesting a recent shower. In the daylight filtering through the windows behind him, that scar on his face was even more pronounced. "Punctual," he said. "I like that. Come in." The penthouse was obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Furniture that probably cost more than most cars. Art on the walls that Lena vaguely recognized from museums. Everything was clean lines and muted colors, expensive without being gaudy, powerful without being loud. Roman led her through the main living space to a home office that was larger than her entire apartment. A desk made of dark wood dominated one side. Built-in bookshelves lined the walls, filled with what looked like actual books rather than decorative props. Through the windows, new Avalon spread out below like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. "Coffee?" Roman asked. "I'm fine." "You look nervous." "I'm meeting with a man whose last name is synonymous with organized crime to discuss becoming his employee. I think nervous is appropriate." He smiled, actually smiled. "At least you're honest about it. Sit." Lena sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Roman didn't sit behind the desk. Instead, he leaned against it, arms crossed, studying her with those unsettling dark eyes. "Did you look me up last night?" he asked. "Yes." "And?" "You're either a brilliant businessman or a criminal mastermind. Possibly both." "Definitely both." He said it so casually, like he was discussing the weather. "I'm not going to insult your intelligence by pretending I'm just a legitimate entrepreneur who made good investments. I'm offering you a position in an organization that operates in both legal and illegal spaces. You'll see things, hear things, be privy to information that could put people in prison or in the ground. If you can't handle that reality, walk away now and I'll still pay for your mother's treatment. No strings attached." "Oh, why would you do that?" "Because I respect honesty, and you've been honest with me. That's rare." He moved to a small bar cart and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, despite it being barely afternoon. "But if you stay, if you take this job, you become part of my world. And my world doesn't let people leave easily. So make sure you understand what you're choosing." Lena's throat was dry. What exactly would I be doing? Managing my schedule, coordinating with my various business interests, handling communications I don't have time for, running interference with people I don't want to deal with. You'll live on my estate, have your own quarters, and be on call essentially 24/7. In exchange, you get the salary I mentioned, full benefits, and your mother gets transferred to Northbridge Medical immediately. Dr. Chen is already aware of the situation and ready to take her case. You arranged that already? I arranged it before I left the gala last night. Jesus. Why me? Lena asked again. You could hire someone with actual qualifications, someone with experience. Experience makes people predictable. They bring baggage, expectations, loyalty to other employers. You're hungry, you're desperate, and you looked at me like I was just another asshole instead of someone to fear or manipulate. Those qualities are more valuable than a resume. He took a drink. Plus, everyone I've hired in the past 5 years either wants to sleep with me or wants my job. You want your mother to live. That's a much more useful motivation. How do you know I won't go to the police? Because you're smart enough to know the police won't help you. Because you've lived in New Avalon long enough to understand how power actually works in this city. And because if you were going to run, you wouldn't be here. He set down his glass. I need an answer, Lena. Yes or no. There's no trial period, no probation. You're either in or you're out. This was insane. This was the worst decision she could possibly make. This was, my mother needs to be transferred today, Lena heard herself say. Not tomorrow. Today. Dr. Chen evaluates her personally, not through some resident, and I get regular updates on her condition and treatment plan. Roman's expression shifted. Surprise? Approval? Done. And I want a contract, everything in writing. Salary, benefits, housing details, my job responsibilities. If I'm signing my life over to you, I want documentation. My lawyer will have it ready by tomorrow morning. I want to review it with my own lawyer before I sign. Do you have a lawyer? I'll find one. Now he definitely looked amused. Anything else? If I decide to leave, you let me go. No threats, no retaliation. My mother's care continues regardless. No. The word was flat, final. I told you, my world doesn't let people leave easily. If you walk away with nothing. Your mother goes back to Mercy General. You're on your own. Those are the terms. Take them or leave them. Lena's pulse hammered in her ears. This was the moment. The cliff's edge. The point of no return. She thought about her mother in that hospital bed, skin like paper, bones showing through like geography. Thought about the bills piling up, the collection calls, the slow grinding horror of watching someone you loved disintegrate because you couldn't afford to save them. Thought about Roman Calvetti standing on that balcony, looking at her like she mattered. Okay, she said. I'm in. Roman extended his hand. Lena shook it. His grip was firm, warm, absolutely controlled. Welcome to the Empire, Lena Virelli, he said. Try not to die. Things moved fast after that. By 6 p.m. that evening, Lena's mother was being transferred to Northbridge Medical Center in a private ambulance with 2 nurses monitoring her vitals. By 7 p.m., Dr. Sarah Chen had completed her initial evaluation and started adjusting the treatment protocol. By 9 p.m., Lena was standing in what was apparently going to be her new home. Roman's estate sat on 15 acres of cliffside property 20 minutes outside the city. The main house was a sprawling modern structure of glass and stone that looked like it had grown out of the landscape rather than been built on it. The grounds were surrounded by walls that were technically decorative but definitely functional, with security cameras everywhere and guards patrolling in discrete intervals. Your quarters, Roman said, leading her through the main house to a separate wing. It wasn't quarters, it was an apartment. Full kitchen, living room, bedroom, with an actual king-size bed, bathroom with a tub the size of a small pool, windows overlooking the ocean, where waves crashed against rocks in a rhythm that sounded like violence set to music. This is insane, Lena said. This is practical. You'll be working odd hours. It makes sense for you to be on site. Roman stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. There's a car in the garage for your use, black Mercedes. Keys are on the kitchen counter. The estate has a gym, a pool, and a library if you need any of those. Kitchen staff will prepare meals, but you're welcome to cook for yourself if you prefer. Any questions? About 1,000. Where do you sleep? The question came out before Lena could stop it. Roman's expression didn't change. Other side of the house. You won't see me unless you need to, or I need you. Your privacy is respected here. And the people who work for you, the guards, the staff, they know you work for me. That's all they need to know. You're not here to make friends with them. You're here to work. Remember that. He left her alone after that. Lena stood in the middle of her new apartment, her new home, and tried to process what had just happened. 24 hours ago, she'd been serving champagne to people who didn't know she existed. Now she was living in a mansion. Her mother was receiving world-class medical care, and she was employed by one of the most dangerous men in New Avalon. Her phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. Your mother is stable and resting. Dr. Chen will begin treatment tomorrow morning. You can visit anytime. Lena sat on the edge of the obscenely comfortable bed and cried. Not from sadness, from relief. For the first time in 3 years, someone else was carrying the weight. Someone else was making the impossible possible. She didn't have to figure out how to pay for medication, or which bill to skip this month, or whether she could afford to eat lunch. Roman Calvetti had bought her problems and solved them with the kind of casual efficiency that came from having more money than God, and all it cost her was her soul. Probably. She was too tired to care. Lena fell asleep in her clothes, in this stranger's house, in a bed that cost more than her entire year's rent. And for the first time in months, she slept through the night without waking up in a panic about money or death or the slow grinding horror of being poor in a city that ate people like her alive. When she woke up the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the windows and someone had left breakfast outside her door. Fresh pastries, coffee, orange juice, everything arranged on a silver tray like she was someone who mattered. The contract was there too. 40 pages of legal language that basically said she belonged to Roman Calvetti now, in every way except the ones that would hold up in court. Lena read it twice. Then she signed it. And somewhere in the house, she could hear music playing, something classical and complicated, the same Baroque piece from the elevator. And she wondered if this was what it felt like to sell your soul, or if it was what it felt like to finally make a choice that might actually save someone you loved. There was no way to tell the difference anymore. Not that it mattered. She was already in too deep to turn back. The water was closing over her head. And Roman Calvetti was the only one who knew how to breathe underwater. The first week passed like a fever dream. Lena learned Roman's world operated on rules that had nothing to do with normal human behavior. He woke at 5 a.m. every morning, swam 40 laps in the infinity pool overlooking the cliffs, then spent an hour in his home gym punishing a heavy bag like it owed him money. By 7, he was showered, dressed, and sitting in his office with coffee and the Wall Street Journal, fielding calls from people who spoke in careful code about shipments and territories and problems that needed solving. Lena's job was to manage the chaos around him. Schedule meetings, screen calls, coordinate between his legitimate businesses, the shipping company, the casino holdings, the real estate development firm, and the parts of his empire that existed in darker spaces. She never asked direct questions about the latter. She didn't need to. When a man called asking about the delivery from Santos and whether the package had been cleaned, it didn't take a genius to figure out they weren't discussing furniture. Roman had been right about one thing. She was good at this. Maybe it was growing up poor, learning to read people's intentions from their tone, their posture, the things they didn't say. Maybe it was 3 years of service work, becoming invisible while remaining essential. Whatever it was, Lena could walk into a room full of Roman's associates, men in expensive suits with dead eyes and careful smiles, and know within 30 seconds who was loyal, who was scared, and who was already planning their betrayal. "You're a natural," Roman said one evening, reviewing her notes from a meeting with his legal team. They were in his office, the sun setting over the Atlantic in streaks of red and gold that looked like the sky was bleeding. "Most people take months to understand the dynamics. You picked it up in days. Most people probably didn't grow up translating their drunk father's threats into polite conversation with landlords," Lena said, without looking up from her laptop. "I thought you said your father was gone." "He was. Drunk first, then gone. The order matters." Roman set down the papers. "You don't talk about your past much. Neither do you." "I asked first." Lena finally met his eyes. He was watching her with that unnerving focus he had, like she was a puzzle he was determined to solve. "What do you want to know?" "Why you stayed in New Avalon. Someone with your intelligence could have left, started over somewhere else." "And left my mother where?" On the street? Lena closed her laptop. You don't abandon family, even when it would be easier. Something flickered across Roman's face. Recognition, maybe. Or understanding. No, he said quietly. You don't. The moment stretched between them, strange and almost intimate. Then Roman's phone buzzed. It always buzzed, constantly, an endless stream of demands from people who needed things, and the moment shattered. Marcus is here, he said, reading the text. We'll pick this up tomorrow. Marcus. Lena had heard the name before but never met him. Roman's head of security, apparently. Former military, according to the brief background she'd compiled. Special forces. Multiple tours overseas before Roman had recruited him for private work. She gathered her things and headed for the door, but Roman stopped her. Lena. She turned. Your mother's responding well to treatment. Dr. Chen called this afternoon. Thought you'd want to know. The relief that hit her was physical. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep doing your job. But there was something in his voice, something that almost sounded like kindness, and Lena carried it with her back to her quarters like a secret. Well, she met Dante Morelli on her 9th day at the estate. Lena was in the main kitchen, a massive space of stainless steel and marble that felt more like a professional restaurant than a home, making coffee at 6 a.m. when he walked in. Tall, lean, maybe 35, with the kind of pretty boy face that had probably gotten him out of trouble his entire life. Dark hair gelled back, expensive watch, eyes that tracked her movement like a predator sizing up prey. You're the new girl, he said. Not a question. I'm Lena, Roman's assistant. Right, the assistant. He said it like the word tasted bad. Dante Morelli. I run operations for the family. Nice to meet you. Is it? He moved closer, invading her space deliberately. Because from where I'm standing, you're a massive fucking security risk who showed up out of nowhere and now has access to everything. So forgive me if I'm not throwing you a welcome party. Lena held her ground. You have concerns about me. Take them up with Roman. Oh, I did. He told me to back off. Which is interesting considering Roman doesn't usually let pussy cloud his judgment. The coffee maker hissed behind her. Lena counted to 3, keeping her expression neutral. You finished? Depends. You planning on sticking around, or is this just a temporary gig until you find someone richer? I work for Roman. That's all you need to know. See? That's where you're wrong. Dante leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Everyone who works for Roman works for the family. And the family has rules, loyalty, silence, blood in, blood out. You understand what that means? It means you're trying to intimidate me at 6 in the morning over coffee, which tells me you're either insecure about your position or you genuinely think I'm a threat. Either way, it's not my problem. His jaw tightened. You think you're smart. I think I'm tired and I haven't had caffeine yet. So unless you've got something productive to say, I'm going back to my quarters. She grabbed her coffee and walked out before he could respond, her heart hammering but her hands steady. She could feel his eyes on her back the entire way. That night, she Googled Dante Morelli. The results were sparse, a few mentions in business filings. One old arrest record from when he was 19, assault charges that had been dropped. A photo from a charity event where he stood next to Roman, both of them in tuxedos, both of them looking like they could kill you without breaking a sweat. Lena closed her laptop and stared out at the ocean. She'd known this job came with complications, but she'd underestimated how many people in Roman's world would see her as either a weakness to exploit or a problem to eliminate. Can. Her mother's first phone call came on day 12. Lena was in her quarters reviewing Roman's schedule for the next week when her phone rang. The hospital number. Mom? Baby? Her mother's voice was stronger than it had been in months. Still weak, still threaded with pain, but stronger. I'm at Northbridge. They transferred me. The doctor's here. Lena. They're incredible. Dr. Chen spent 2 hours with me today, explaining the treatment plan. 2 hours. Like I was actually a person who mattered. Lena's throat closed up. How are you feeling? Tired, nauseous from the new meds, but hopeful, baby. For the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. A pause. How did you manage this? The nurse said it was all arranged privately. The bills are covered? Everything? I got a new job. What kind of job pays for this level of care? A good one, Mom. That's all that matters. Lena, I have to go. I'll visit tomorrow, okay? I love you. She hung up before her mother could ask more questions. Then she sat on her bed and cried for the second time since moving into the estate. Not from sadness, from the sheer overwhelming relief of hearing her mother sound like she might actually live. Whatever price she'd paid, whatever price she was still going to pay, it was worth it. It had to be. Okay. The cracks started showing in week 3. Lena was getting better at navigating Roman's world, learning the rhythms and patterns, understanding when to speak and when to disappear. But she was also starting to notice things that didn't add up, like the way Roman's phone would ring at odd hours, and he'd leave the room to take the call, his voice dropping to a murmur she couldn't hear through the walls. Like the meetings that happened in the estate's lower level, a space she'd been explicitly told was off limits, where men arrived after midnight and left before dawn. Like the way Dante watched her constantly, his hostility sharpening into something that felt almost like anticipation, like he was waiting for her to make a mistake he could weaponize. One night, Lena was working late in Roman's office. He was in the city dealing with some crisis at one of the casinos, when she heard voices from below. The estate's architecture was strange, all open spaces and stone, and sound carried in unexpected ways. She shouldn't have been able to hear anything from the lower level, but the ventilation system must have created some acoustic anomaly because suddenly she could hear every word. Dante's voice. Telling you, she's a liability. You're letting her get too close. Another voice, male, unfamiliar. Roman knows what he's doing. Does he? Because from where I'm sitting, he's thinking with his dick instead of his brain. We don't know anything about her. She could be FBI. She could be working for the Zanettis. She could be... She's a waitress whose mother has cancer. Marcus ran her background 6 ways from Sunday. She's clean. Was clean. People change when you wave enough money in their faces. Then handle it. I plan to. The voices faded, footsteps echoing on stairs she couldn't see. Lena sat frozen at Roman's desk, her pulse thundering in her ears. They thought she was a plant, an informant, a threat. And Dante was planning to handle it. She should tell Roman, should walk straight to him and repeat every word she'd heard. But something stopped her. Maybe it was the way Roman had looked at her that first night on the balcony, like he already knew every secret she'd ever hidden. Maybe it was the fact that she was getting too close, that somewhere between managing his schedule and sitting across from him during late-night strategy sessions, she'd started seeing him as more than just her employer. Or maybe it was the simple, terrifying truth that she didn't know who to trust anymore. Maquette. The confrontation came 3 days later. Lena was leaving her quarters to grab breakfast when Dante stepped out of the shadows near the main staircase. Literally stepped out of the shadows, like he'd been waiting for her. We need to talk, he said. I'm busy. Make time. He grabbed her arm, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make his point. Now. Lena jerked free. Touch me again, and we're going to have a problem. We already have a problem, sweetheart. You just don't know it yet. He moved closer, backing her against the wall. You think Roman trusts you? He doesn't trust anyone. You're useful to him right now, but the second you stop being useful, you're gone. And I'm going to make sure that happens sooner rather than later. Why? What the hell did I do to you? You exist. In his space. In his life. Distracting him from the fact that we've got federal investigators crawling up our ass and rivals making moves we should have anticipated weeks ago. But Roman's too busy playing house with his new pet to notice. I'm not his pet. Then what are you? Dante's voice dropped to something cold and vicious. Because you sure as hell aren't qualified to be his assistant. You're not family. You're not one of us. So what are you, Lena? What does Roman Calvetti want with a broke little waitress from Ashford? The question hung between them like a blade. Before Lena could answer, another voice cut through the tension. Dante? Roman stood at the top of the stairs, perfectly still, perfectly controlled. But there was something in his posture that made every instinct Lena had screamed danger. Dante stepped back immediately. We were just talking. No, you were threatening her. Roman descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. In my house, after I specifically told you to back off. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to Lena, then you're going to get in your car and drive back to the city. And you're going to think very carefully about whether your position in this organization is worth the consequences of ignoring my direct orders. Roman, I'm just trying to protect. I don't need your protection. I need your obedience. Apologize. Dante's jaw worked. He looked at Lena, and the hatred in his eyes was so pure it was almost beautiful. I apologize. Now leave. Dante left. The silence that followed was worse than the confrontation. Roman turned to Lena. You okay? Fine. You're shaking. She looked down at her hands. He was right. I'm fine, she repeated. Roman studied her for a long moment. Then, surprising her, he reached out and took her hand. His grip was warm, steady, absolutely controlled. Dante's protective of the family. It makes him paranoid. But he crossed a line. It won't happen again. He thinks I'm FBI. He thinks everyone's FBI. It's his job to be suspicious. And what do you think? Lena pulled her hand back, suddenly needing the distance. Do you think I'm a threat? If I thought you were a threat, you wouldn't be here. He said it so simply, like it was obvious. I know exactly who you are, Lena. I knew before I made the offer. Desperate, loyal, too smart for your own good. Those qualities make you valuable. They don't make you dangerous. Then why does Dante hate me so much? Roman's expression shifted, something almost like amusement. Because you scare him. I scare him. He's the one threatening me in stairwells. You scare him because I listen to you, because in 3 weeks you've learned more about how this organization runs than most people learn in 3 years. Because when you walk into a room, I pay attention. He stepped closer, and suddenly the space between them felt charged with something Lena couldn't name. That kind of influence is power, and power makes people like Dante nervous. I don't want power, I just want my mother to live. I know, that's why I trust you. His hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw in a gesture so gentle it made her breath catch. But trust is a luxury in my world, Lena, and eventually, everyone who gets close to me has to choose, loyalty or survival. You can't have both. What did you choose? His smile was sad. I stopped believing in survival a long time ago. Then he walked away, leaving Lena alone in the hallway, with her heart pounding and her thoughts spinning, and the absolute certainty that she was falling for a man who'd already warned her not to. Oops. The nightmares started that week. Lena would wake up gasping, sheets soaked with sweat, the remnants of dreams she couldn't quite remember leaving her shaking and nauseous. In the dreams, she was drowning, or running, or watching her mother die while Roman stood in the corner with blood on his hands, telling her it was necessary. She started sleeping less, working more, throwing herself into the job because it was easier than thinking about what she'd gotten herself into. Roman noticed. Of course he noticed. You look like hell, he said one morning, finding her in the kitchen at 4 a.m. with her third cup of coffee. Thanks. You really know how to charm a girl. When's the last time you slept? I'm sleeping fine. Lena. I'm fine, Roman, just busy. You keep me busy, remember? 24/7 on call. That's the job. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying her with those dark eyes that saw too much. What's wrong? Nothing. Try again. I said I'm fine. You're having nightmares. You've lost weight. You jump every time someone walks into a room. So either tell me what's wrong, or I'm pulling you off active duty until you deal with it. Lena set down her coffee with more force than necessary. You want to know what's wrong? I'm living in a mansion working for a crime lord while my mother's getting cancer treatment that costs more than most people make in a lifetime. I'm surrounded by men who either want to sleep with me or kill me, sometimes both. I haven't had a normal conversation with anyone outside this estate in a month, and every single day I wake up wondering when the bill for all this is going to come due. That's what's wrong, Roman. I sold my soul, and I'm still waiting to find out what you actually bought. Ham chimkota. The kitchen fell silent. Roman didn't move, didn't react, just watched her with an expression she couldn't read. You think I bought you, he said finally. Didn't you? No, I gave you a choice. You made it. If you regret it, you can leave any time. You said people don't leave your world. I said it's not easy. I didn't say it's impossible. He pushed off the counter, moving closer. But you're right about one thing. There's always a price. For me, the price was watching my father put a gun in his mouth when I was 23 because he couldn't handle the weight of what he'd built. For Dante, it was killing his best friend on my father's orders to prove his loyalty. For Marcus, it was leaving his family behind because being close to them put them in danger. Everyone in this house has paid something. The question is whether what you're getting is worth what you're giving up. And if it's not, then you walk away. But you make that choice now, Lena, not 6 months from now when things get worse. Because they will get worse. They always do. His phone rang. He ignored it. I don't know what I'm doing here, Lena admitted quietly. I thought I did. I thought it was simple. Save my mother, do the job, keep my head down. But nothing about this is simple. No, it's not. Do you ever regret it? This life? Roman was quiet for a long moment. Then, every day. But regret doesn't change anything. It just makes you weak. And weakness gets you killed. The phone rang again. This time he answered it. What? His tone shifted instantly, going cold and flat. When? Who knows? No, don't move him yet. I'm on my way. He hung up and looked at Lena. I have to go into the city. Something happened at one of the warehouses. What kind of something? The kind that requires my immediate attention. He grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. Stay here. Don't leave the estate. Marcus will be in charge of security while I'm gone. Roman, I'll be back by tonight. We'll talk then. He left before she could argue. Lena stood in the kitchen, listening to his car roar down the driveway, and felt the first real flutter of fear in her chest. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. Marcus found her an hour later. Boss wants you to stay in your quarters until he gets back, he said. No preamble. No explanation. Why? Because he said so. That's not an answer. Marcus, a brick wall of a man with a shaved head and eyes that had seen too much combat, actually looked uncomfortable. There's been an incident. Details are unclear. Roman wants you protected until we know more. Protected from what? From whatever's coming. That should have been cryptic, unhelpful, but Lena understood immediately. Someone had made a move against Roman, and he was worried it might extend to her. She went back to her quarters and tried to work, but concentration was impossible. Her phone sat on the desk, silent. No calls, no texts. Nothing from Roman, or the hospital, or anyone else. The afternoon crawled by. By evening, Lena couldn't stand it anymore. She left her quarters and went looking for Marcus, but the main house was eerily quiet. No guards in the usual positions, no staff moving through the halls, just silence and the sound of waves crashing against the cliffs outside. She found Marcus in Roman's office, on the phone, his expression dark. I don't give a fuck what the count was supposed to be, he was saying. 3 of our guys are dead, and $500,000 in product is gone. Someone talked, someone inside. And when I find out who, I'm going to... He saw Lena and went quiet. I'll call you back. What's happening? Lena demanded. Nothing you need to worry about. Marcus, go back to your quarters, Lena. Tell me what's happening or I walk out that door and find out myself. They stared at each other. Marcus broke first. Someone hit one of our shipments at the port. 3 men dead, cargo missing, and the cops showed up exactly 4 minutes after the shooting stopped. Which means someone tipped them off. Someone who knew the route, the timing, everything. An informant? A traitor. Inside the organization. Marcus's jaw tightened. Roman's in the city trying to figure out who. Dante's running down leads, and everyone else is on lockdown until we know who we can trust. Do you think it was me? If I thought it was you, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You'd be in the basement waiting for Roman to come home and ask you some very pointed questions. He moved to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. But someone talked, and people are going to start pointing fingers. So do yourself a favor and stay out of sight until this blows over. Lena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You need to see what Roman really is. Lower level, tonight. Door will be open at midnight. Come alone. Her blood went cold. Problem? Marcus asked. No, just my mom's nurse. Lena forced herself to stay calm. I'm going back to my quarters. Let me know if you hear anything. She walked out before he could see her hands shaking. Back in her room, Lena stared at the text message until the words blurred. This was a trap. Had to be. Someone, probably Dante, trying to set her up, prove she was disloyal, give Roman a reason to cut her loose. But what if it wasn't? What if there was something in that lower level that explained why 3 men had just died? Why Roman operated with the kind of ruthless precision that made hardened criminals nervous? Why everyone in this house looked at him like he was something more than human? Lena looked at the clock. 9:47 p.m. She had 2 hours to decide whether curiosity was worth her life. Matis. At 11:55 p.m., Lena stood at the top of the stairs leading down to the estate's lower level. The door was open, just like the text had promised. She'd checked. Marcus was on the other side of the property, coordinating with Roman security teams in the city. The guards had rotated shifts, and there was a 15-minute window where this section of the house was unwatched. Someone had planned this carefully. Lena took the stairs slowly, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. The lower level was cold, temperature-controlled. The walls bare concrete instead of the polished stone of the main house. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, throwing everything into sharp relief. The hallway opened into a series of rooms. The first was empty except for filing cabinets. The second looked like a surveillance center, monitors showing different angles of the estate, the city, locations she didn't recognize. The third, Lena stopped in the doorway. It was an office. Roman's office, clearly, though nothing like the elegant space upstairs. This was functional, brutal. A massive desk covered in papers and maps and what looked like shipping manifests. But it was the wall that made her breath catch. Photos. Dozens of them. Pinned to a massive board like something from a detective show. Faces she didn't recognize, buildings, cars. And in the center, a photo of a man, older, gray-haired, with a smile that looked carved from ice. Someone had drawn a red X through his face. Beneath the photo, a single word in Roman's handwriting, next. You shouldn't be here. Lena spun around. Dante stood in the doorway, and the expression on his face was somewhere between satisfaction and pity. I got a text. I know. I sent it. He stepped into the room. I wanted you to see this, to understand what you're really working for. What is this? This is Roman's war room, where he plans operations, tracks enemies, decides who lives and who disappears. Dante gestured to the board. That man in the center? Victor Zanetti, head of the Zanetti family. Roman's been systematically destroying his organization for the past year. Warehouses burned, shipments stolen, key players murdered, all leading up to one thing, killing Victor himself. Why? Because the Zanettis killed Roman's father. Or so Roman believes. He's been planning revenge since he was 23 years old. Building his empire, consolidating power, waiting for the right moment. And now he's close. So close he can taste it. Dante's voice was cold. But here's the thing about revenge, Lena. It makes you reckless, emotional, sloppy. And tonight, Roman got sloppy. 3 of our guys died because he was so focused on Victor that he missed signs of a double cross inside our own organization. You think there's a traitor? I know there's a traitor, someone who knew about tonight's shipment, someone who tipped off the Zanettis and the cops simultaneously, someone who's been feeding information to our enemies for weeks. He moved closer. And every person Roman trusts is a suspect, including you. I know you didn't. You're not smart enough to play both sides, but you're also not smart enough to survive what's coming. Roman's going to war, Lena. Real war. Not the controlled, civilized version you've seen so far. Blood on the streets, bodies in the river, federal investigations that will tear this entire organization apart. And when that happens, people like you, civilians who got caught in the crossfire, they don't make it out. Lena's voice was steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. Why are you telling me this? Because I liked you better when you were nobody, when you were just the help. But Roman sees something in you, and that makes you dangerous to all of us. So I'm giving you one chance. Take your mother and run. Tonight. I'll make sure you have money, new identities, protection, but you leave and you never come back. And if I don't, then you stay. And when this house of cards collapses, you go down with the rest of us. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Dante's expression shifted. Shit, that's Marcus. If he finds you down here, I'll tell him you brought me. He won't believe you. Then I'll tell Roman you sent me a threatening text and lured me down here to scare me. Who do you think he'll believe? Dante's jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. Probably. But it's my mistake to make. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his hand moving to the gun at his hip before he recognized them. What the hell are you both doing down here? I got lost, Lena said before Dante could speak. Dante was showing me back upstairs. Marcus looked between them, clearly not buying it. Roman doesn't want anyone down here right now. Then maybe you should escort us out, Dante said coolly. The three of them climbed the stairs in tense silence. When they reached the main floor, Marcus grabbed Lena's arm. Your quarters, now, and stay there until Roman gets back. Lena went without arguing. Back in her room, she locked the door and collapsed against it, her entire body shaking. She'd just seen evidence of Roman's real business. The planning, the violence, the systematic destruction of human beings in pursuit of revenge. And instead of being horrified, instead of running like any sane person would, all Lena could think about was the look on Roman's face that morning when he'd told her everyone pays a price. For me, the price was watching my father put a gun in his mouth. Roman wasn't just a crime lord building an empire. He was a son avenging his father. And Lena had just realized she was standing in the middle of a war zone. Roman came home at 3 a.m. Lena heard his car in the driveway, heard the front door open and close, heard his footsteps moving through the house. She waited, sitting on her bed fully dressed, knowing he'd come to her eventually. He did. The knock was soft. It's me. She opened the door. Roman looked exhausted. His tie was gone, shirt untucked, hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it for hours. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Bloodshot. Haunted. Old. Can I come in? He asked. Lena stepped aside. He walked to the window and stood there, looking out at the ocean. Marcus said you were in the lower level tonight. Yes. Why? I got a text from Dante telling me to come see what you really are. Roman's shoulders tensed. And what did you see? Your war room, the photos, the plans. Lena moved to stand beside him. Victor Zanetti. Ah, he said it softly, almost sadly. So now you know. Tell me the truth, Roman, all of it, because I'm standing in your house, eating your food, managing your empire, and I don't even know what I'm part of anymore. He was quiet for a long time, long enough that Lena thought he might not answer. Then, my father built this organization from nothing. Shipping, real estate, legitimate businesses mixed with less legitimate ones. He was careful, strategic. He made deals with families like the Zanettis, maintained balance, avoided unnecessary bloodshed. For 30 years, he kept the peace. Roman's voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reciting facts about someone else's life. Then, one night, I came home from a business trip and found him in his office, gun in his hand, half his head on the wall behind him. The note said he was sorry, that the weight had become too much. Jesus, Roman. But it was a lie. The suicide, the note, all of it. My father would never have killed himself. He was too proud, too stubborn, too fucking angry at the world to just give up. So I started digging. And I found out about the Zanettis, how they'd been pressuring him to expand into territories he'd refused to touch. Trafficking. Narcotics with no regulation, no quality control, just pure poison. He'd said no, threatened to expose them if they didn't back off. So they made it look like he'd broken under the pressure. Roman's hands clenched into fists. They murdered my father and made me bury him as a coward. And I've spent 18 years building enough power to destroy them completely. 3 men died tonight because of this war. I know. And there's a traitor in your organization. I know that too. So what are you going to do? He finally turned to look at her, and the rawness in his expression nearly broke her. Whatever it takes, find the traitor. Eliminate the threat. Finish what my father couldn't. And if that means more bodies, more bloodshed, more risk, then that's the price. Even if it destroys you? I've been destroyed since I was 23 years old, Lena. I'm just finishing the job. The words hung between them like a confession. Lena reached out and took his hand. His fingers were cold. Dante gave me an out tonight. offered me money, protection, a new identity, told me to run before it's too late. You should take it. Why? Because you're not built for this world. You're good and decent, and you still believe people can be saved. That's going to get you killed. Then why did you hire me? Because for 5 minutes on a balcony in the rain, you looked at me like I was human, and I haven't felt human in a very long time. His hand tightened around hers. But that was selfish. You deserve better than this, better than me. What if I don't want better? The words came out before Lena could stop them. What if I want this, complicated and dangerous and completely insane as it is? Roman stared at her like she'd just spoken a foreign language. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm not running. I'm saying Dante can go to hell. I'm saying I'm staying right here in this war zone with you because apparently I'm just as broken as you are. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat coming off him. So stop trying to protect me from yourself, Roman. I'm a grown woman. I can make my own terrible decisions. Lena, She kissed him. Or he kissed her. Later, she wouldn't be able to say who moved first. All she knew was that suddenly his mouth was on hers, desperate and rough, and tasting like whiskey and exhaustion. His hands came up to cup her face, holding her like she might disappear if he let go. And Lena kissed him back with everything she had, all the fear and confusion and inappropriate attraction she'd been trying to ignore for weeks. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Roman rested his forehead against hers. "This is a mistake," he whispered. "Probably. I can't protect you if we do this. I don't need protection. I need you to be honest with me. I've killed people, Lena. Not ordered it done. Killed them myself. With my own hands. I'm not a good man playing at being bad. I'm just bad. I don't care. You should. Well, I don't." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "So either kick me out right now or accept that I'm staying. Those are your only options." Roman looked at her for a long moment. Then he kissed her again, slower this time, deeper, like he was memorizing the shape of her mouth. When he pulled away, there was something new in his expression, something that looked almost like hope. "You're going to regret this," he said. "Let me worry about my regrets." He left shortly after that, disappearing back to his side of the house with the weight of his empire on his shoulders. And Lena sat on her bed, her lips still tingling, her heart still racing, and thought about the fact that she'd just crossed a line there was no coming back from. She'd fallen in love with a man who was planning a war. And instead of running, she'd chosen to stand beside him, which meant when everything fell apart, and it would fall apart, she knew that now, she'd burn with him. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first honest thing she'd done in her entire life. The explosion came 2 days later. Lena was in the kitchen making breakfast when the windows rattled and the sound hit, a deep, thunderous boom that seemed to come from everywhere at once. She dropped her coffee mug, porcelain shattering across tile, and ran to the nearest window. Black smoke rose from somewhere in the city, a pillar of it climbing into the morning sky like a funeral pyre. Roman's phone started ringing before she could process what she was seeing. He appeared in the kitchen 30 seconds later, already dressed, already moving with the lethal focus of someone going to war. He answered his phone without looking at her. "Talk to me." A pause. His expression went completely flat. "How many casualties?" "I don't give a fuck about the building, Marcus. I want a body count." Another pause. "Get everyone to the safe house. Lock it down. I'm on my way." He hung up and finally looked at Lena. "What happened?" she asked. "The Zanettis just bombed one of our warehouses. 8 men were inside." His voice was ice. "They're declaring war, and I'm going to give them exactly what they asked for." He walked out, and Lena stood in the kitchen, surrounded by broken porcelain and the smell of spilled coffee, and realized the point of no return wasn't when she'd kissed Roman. It was right now, because the war had started, and there was nowhere left to hide. The smoke was still rising when Lena made the decision that would change everything. She didn't tell Marcus where she was going, didn't ask permission, just grabbed the keys to the Mercedes from the kitchen counter and walked straight out the front door while the guards were distracted coordinating Roman's security convoy into the city. By the time anyone noticed she was gone, she was already on the highway, driving toward the black pillar of smoke that stained the morning sky like a bruise. Her hands were shaking on the steering wheel. She'd never driven a car this expensive, never felt this much raw power under her fingertips. The engine purred like a predator, responding to the slightest pressure, and Lena pressed the accelerator harder, weaving through traffic with a recklessness that would have terrified her 48 hours ago. But 48 hours ago, she hadn't kissed Roman Calvetti in her bedroom at 3 in the morning. 48 hours ago, 8 men hadn't just been murdered in an explosion meant to send a message written in blood and burning metal. The warehouse was in the industrial district, a part of New Avalon where questions weren't asked, and nobody looked too closely at what happened after dark. Lena could see the fire trucks from a mile away, red lights strobing against gray morning light. Police had cordoned off the entire block, yellow tape fluttering in the wind that carried the smell of chemicals and charred flesh. She parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot. The building, what was left of it, looked like something from a war zone. The front half had collapsed entirely, steel beams twisted into abstract sculptures of violence. The back section still stood, but barely, walls blackened and windows blown out. Firefighters were still spraying water into the wreckage, steam rising in clouds that looked almost alive. Bodies were being carried out on stretchers, covered in white sheets that were already soaking through with red. Lena's stomach turned. She stood behind the police tape, just another civilian drawn by disaster's gravity, and watched Roman's empire bleed. Hell of a way to start the morning. Lena turned. A woman stood beside her, early 40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Everything about her screamed federal agent, from the badge clipped to her belt to the way she studied Lena like she was cataloging evidence. "Did you know anyone inside?" the woman asked. "No." The lie came automatically. "I just heard the explosion from my apartment. Wanted to see what happened." "Uh-huh?" The woman didn't sound convinced. "You always drive a $100,000 Mercedes to rubberneck at crime scenes?" Lena's pulse quickened. "It's my employer's cars." "Must be a generous employer." The woman pulled out a business card and held it out. "Special Agent Sarah Reeves, FBI. If you remember anything about this morning, anything unusual you saw or heard, give me a call." Lena took the card because refusing would have been more suspicious. "I don't know anything." "Sure you don't." Reeves smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's what everyone says. Right up until they realize they're accessories to murder, and suddenly their memory gets a lot better. You have a good day now." The agent walked away, leaving Lena holding a business card that felt like a grenade with the pin pulled. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Where the hell are you?" Roman is asking. Lena looked at the burning warehouse one more time, at the bodies being loaded into the coroner's van, at the evidence that Roman's war had officially started. Then she got back in the Mercedes and drove toward the address Marcus had sent, a building in the financial district that looked like every other glass and steel monument to capitalism, completely unremarkable except for the armed guard stationed at every entrance. The safe house. But they were waiting for her in a conference room on the 20th floor. Roman stood at the head of a long table, surrounded by men Lena had never seen before. Dante was there, his expression dark. Marcus by the door, arms crossed. And half a dozen others, soldiers, lieutenants, the machinery of Roman's organization gathered in one place for the first time since Lena had entered his world. Every single one of them looked at her like she was a problem they were calculating how to solve. Roman's voice was ice. "Where were you?" "I went to see the warehouse." "Why?" "Because 8 men just died and I wanted to understand what we're dealing with." "We?" Dante laughed, bitter and sharp. "Since when is this we, sweetheart? You've been here 3 weeks. You don't get to use we when talking about family business." "Shut up, Dante." Roman didn't look away from Lena. "You drove to an active crime scene, in my car, where federal agents are currently collecting evidence and interviewing witnesses. Do you have any idea how stupid that was?" "I was careful. You were reckless. And reckless gets people killed." He moved around the table, closing the distance between them. "An FBI agent approached you. I can see it on your face. What did you tell her?" "Nothing. She gave me her card. I left." "Her name?" "Sarah Reeves." One of the men at the table swore under his breath. Roman's jaw tightened. "Reeves has been building a RICO case against my organization for 2 years. She's smart, patient, and completely incorruptible. Which means the fact that she approached you is either very bad luck or very intentional. Did she mention me by name? No. Did she ask who you work for? She asked about the car. I said it was my employer's. And she let you walk away? Dante leaned forward. Nobody's that lucky. She's fishing. Probably ran your plates the second you parked. Which means by now she knows the car is registered to a Calvetti shell company. Which means she knows exactly who you work for. Which means you just gave the FBI a direct link between Roman and that warehouse. You didn't think. Dante stood up, radiating fury. That's the problem. You never think. You just do whatever the hell you want because Roman's too pussy-whipped to discipline you properly. Dante. Roman's voice dropped to something dangerous. Sit down. No. Fuck this. Fuck her. We've got 8 dead soldiers, a federal investigation, and the Zanettis declaring open war, and you're worried about protecting your little pet? She's a liability, Roman. Always has been. And now she's actively sabotaging operations. I said sit down. Or what? You'll shoot me? Go ahead. At least then everyone will know where your priorities actually are. The room went absolutely silent. Roman stared at Dante for a long moment. Then he pulled a gun from his waistband, smooth, practiced, like breathing, and aimed it directly at Dante's head. You want to know where my priorities are? Roman's voice was perfectly calm. They're keeping this organization intact, which means I don't tolerate insubordination from anyone, including you. So sit the fuck down before I demonstrate exactly how serious I am. Dante sat. Roman holstered the gun without looking away. Lena made a mistake. She's new. She's learning. It won't happen again. Everyone clear? Nods around the table. Nobody met Roman's eyes. Good. Now let's talk about what actually matters. The Zanettis hit us hard. 8 men dead, $500,000 in inventory destroyed, and they timed it perfectly to coincide with shift change, so maximum casualties were guaranteed. That level of precision means they had inside information, which means our traitor problem just went from theoretical to confirmed. Roman pulled up photos on the screen behind him, crime scene images, surveillance footage, documents Lena couldn't read from her position. I want every single person with access to that warehouse's schedule vetted. Bank records, phone logs, known associates. Marcus, coordinate with our people in the police department. I want the official report before it goes public. Dante, reach out to our contacts in the Zanetti organization. Someone over there is going to brag about this, and when they do, I want names. And what about her? Dante gestured toward Lena without looking at her. She's a security risk. She needs to be contained. She's contained. Lena, you're confined to the estate until further notice. No excursions. No unauthorized contact with anyone outside this organization. Marcus will assign someone to monitor your movements. Roman's eyes finally met hers, and there was something in his expression that looked almost like apology. Consider yourself on probation. Roman, not now. He turned back to the table. The Zanettis think they can intimidate us with one bombing. They're wrong. We hit back tonight, twice as hard. I want targets identified by noon, extraction teams ready by sunset, and I want Victor Zanetti to understand that every man he kills, I'll take 3 of his. The meeting continued for another hour. Tactical discussions, resource allocation, the cold mathematics of revenge. Lena stood against the wall and listened to Roman systematically plan the destruction of human beings like he was organizing a corporate merger. No emotion, no hesitation, just pure calculated violence. This was who he really was. Not the man who'd held her face gently in the rain, not the man who'd arranged her mother's medical care without being asked. This was Roman Calvetti, crime lord, arms dealer, the king of New Avalon's underworld, planning a war that would paint the streets red. And Lena was trapped in the middle of it. 1. Marcus drove her back to the estate in silence. The guard assigned to monitor her turned out to be a stone-faced man named Victor, who positioned himself outside her quarters and didn't speak when Lena tried to make conversation. She was a prisoner. Gilded cage, silk sheets, but still a prisoner. Her phone buzzed constantly. Messages from the hospital about her mother's progress, updates from Dr. Chen, reminders about upcoming appointments. Her mother was responding to treatment. The cancer markers were dropping. For the first time in 2 years, there was actual hope, and all it had cost Lena was her freedom and her soul. She tried to work, answering emails, managing Roman's schedule, maintaining the appearance of normalcy. But concentration was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those bodies being carried out of the warehouse, saw Agent Reeves' sharp eyes cataloging her existence, saw Roman pointing a gun at Dante's head with the same casual precision he used to sign documents. Around 6 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. Lena almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Virelli? A woman's voice, professional, controlled. This is Special Agent Sarah Reeves. We met this morning at the warehouse fire. Do you have a moment to talk? Lena's mouth went dry. I don't think that's appropriate. I understand you're in a difficult position, but I believe you witnessed something this morning that could be relevant to an ongoing federal investigation. I'd like to ask you a few questions, completely off the record, just a conversation. I already told you I don't know anything. You work for Roman Calvetti. You live on his estate. You have access to his schedule, his communications, his business operations. So either you're the most oblivious employee in history or you're lying to protect him. Which is it? I'm hanging up now. 8 men died this morning, Miss Virelli. They were burned alive in an explosion meant to send a message in a gang war that's going to get a lot more people killed before it's over. And you can help stop it. All you have to do is tell me the truth about what Roman Calvetti is really running. He's a businessman. He's a criminal. And you know it. The question is whether you're willing to be complicit in murder to protect him. Lena hung up. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. Victor appeared in her doorway immediately. Who was that? Spam call. He didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes. But he didn't push. Just returned to his post outside her door like a sentinel. Lena sat on her bed and tried to breathe through the panic closing around her throat. The FBI knew who she was. They were building a case, and they thought she could be flipped. If Roman found out she'd talked to Agent Reeves, even just this phone call, he'd see it as betrayal. And betrayal in his world had only one consequence. She needed to tell him, needed to get ahead of this before it spiraled into something she couldn't control. But when she tried to call Roman, it went straight to voicemail. He was already gone, already executing whatever violent retaliation he'd planned in that conference room. Already proving to the Zanettis that his empire couldn't be shaken by one bombing. Lena was alone. The retaliation hit the news at midnight. Lena was still awake, unable to sleep, when her phone lit up with notifications. She opened the news app and saw the headline, Multiple shootings across New Avalon, gang war suspected. 3 locations. Simultaneous attacks. A restaurant in Little Italy where Zanetti soldiers were known to gather, a social club in the warehouse district, and a luxury apartment building where Victor Zanetti's nephew lived with his family. 9 dead, 14 wounded. The city was calling it the worst outbreak of gang violence in 20 years, and Lena knew exactly who was responsible. Her phone rang. Roman. Are you watching the news? His voice sounded distant, hollow. Yes. I need you to understand something. This isn't personal. This is business. The Zanettis struck first. I'm just responding proportionally. You killed 9 people. I killed 9 soldiers. 9 men who chose this life knowing the risks, just like our men did when they showed up for work this morning at that warehouse. Roman, I'm not asking for your approval, Lena. I'm telling you how this works. You wanted to stay. You wanted to be part of this world. Well, this is what that world looks like. Blood for blood, power for power, no mercy, no hesitation. And if you can't handle it, if you're going to fall apart every time I make a hard decision, then maybe Dante was right. Maybe you don't belong here. The words hit like a slap. I can handle it, Lena said quietly. Can you? Because from where I'm standing, you look like you're about to run to the FBI and trade everything you know for immunity and a clear conscience. I would never... Agent Reeves called you tonight. Don't lie to me. Victor monitors all calls coming in and out of the estate. I know she reached out. I know you talked to her. So tell me the truth, Lena. Right now. What did you say? Fear crystallized into something cold and sharp in Lena's chest. She asked me to cooperate. I told her no. Then I hung up. That's it? That's it. I swear. Silence on the line. Long enough that Lena thought he might have hung up. Then... I believe you, but perception matters in my world. And the perception is that you're a weak link. someone the feds think they can flip, which makes you a target, not just for them, but for people inside my organization who see you as a liability. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay at the estate. You're going to keep your head down. And you're going to give me absolutely zero reasons to doubt your loyalty. Understood? Yes. Good. I'll be home tomorrow. We'll talk then. He hung up. Lena sat in the dark, listening to the sound of her own heartbeat, and realized she'd just been threatened by the man she'd kissed 2 nights ago. The man she'd fallen in love with. The man who'd just killed 9 people and would kill 9 more without blinking if it served his purposes. She pulled up Agent Reeves' contact information and stared at the number. 1 call. That's all it would take. Cooperation in exchange for protection. Immunity in exchange for testimony. A way out of this nightmare that was spiraling faster than she could process. But then she thought about her mother, finally receiving treatment that was working. Thought about the contract she'd signed, the choice she'd made, the line she'd already crossed by staying after seeing Roman's war room. Lena deleted the contact, then she deleted the call history. Then she went to bed and dreamed of burning buildings and bodies covered in white sheets. Roman came home at dawn. Lena heard his car in the driveway, heard him moving through the house, heard him dismiss Victor from his post. Then he was knocking on her door, and when she opened it, he looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Can I come in? She stepped aside. Roman walked to the window and stood there, staring out at the ocean like it held answers. His clothes were different from yesterday. Fresh suit, clean shirt, but there was dried blood on his shoes. Just a spatter, barely visible, but Lena saw it. I killed a man tonight, Roman said quietly. Not ordered, killed. With my own hands, Victor Zanetti's nephew. 26 years old, had a wife, a kid on the way. And I put a bullet in his head while he begged for his life because that's what you do when someone declares war on your family. You make them understand that every action has consequences. Lena's throat was tight. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to know who I am, not the version I show you when we're alone, not the man who worries about whether you're eating enough or sleeping enough. The real me, the one who's capable of looking into a terrified man's eyes and pulling the trigger without hesitation. I already know who you are. No. You know who you want me to be. There's a difference. He turned to face her. I'm giving you one more chance to leave, Lena. Right now. Walk away. I'll make sure you're protected, make sure your mother's care continues, make sure the FBI never connects you to any of this. You can disappear, start over, live a normal life. And if I stay? Then you stay all the way. No more second guessing. No more moral crises every time I make a decision you don't like. You accept that this is who I am, what I do, and you don't flinch. Because I can't afford to worry about whether you're going to break every time things get ugly. I need to know you're solid, that you're mine. The possessiveness in that last word should have scared her. Instead, it made something fierce and reckless unfurl in her chest. I'm not leaving, Lena said. You should. Well, I'm not. She closed the distance between them. You want to know if I'm solid? I'm solid. You want to know if I'm yours? I'm yours. I'm not running to the FBI. I'm not falling apart. I'm standing right here in this fucked up situation, choosing you. So stop trying to protect me from yourself and just accept that I'm staying. Roman stared at her for a long moment. Then he kissed her, hard and desperate, like he was drowning and she was air. His hands were in her hair, on her face, pulling her closer, and Lena kissed him back with everything she had, all the fear and fury and inappropriate love that had been building since that first night on the balcony. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Roman pressed his forehead to hers. I'm going to ruin you, he whispered. I'm already ruined. Not yet. But you will be. His thumb brushed her cheek. This war is going to get worse before it gets better. People are going to die. Lines are going to be crossed. And you're going to see things that will give you nightmares for the rest of your life. And when it's over, when the dust settles and the bodies are buried, you're going to look at me and wonder how you ever convinced yourself you could love a monster. Then I'll deal with it then. But right now, I'm here. I'm staying. And you're going to have to accept that. He kissed her again, softer this time, almost reverent. Then he left, disappearing back to his side of the estate with the weight of his empire and his conscience dragging him down. Lena stood alone in her quarters, and wondered if she'd just made the bravest decision of her life or the stupidest. Probably both. The war escalated over the next 2 weeks. Car bombs, drive-by shootings, kidnappings, bodies turning up in the river with messages carved into their skin. The Zanettis and the Calvettis traded violence like currency, each attack more brutal than the last, and New Avalon descended into the kind of chaos that made headlines nationally. Federal agents flooded the city. The mayor held press conferences demanding action, and Roman's organization circled the wagons, everyone on high alert, everyone suspicious of everyone else. Lena stayed at the estate, managing Roman's legitimate businesses while his soldiers waged war in the streets. She coordinated shipments, handled communications, maintained the fiction that Calvetti Enterprises was just another corporation. But at night, she'd hear Roman on the phone issuing orders in code, and she'd know that somewhere in the city, someone was about to die. She stopped sleeping well, stopped eating regularly, started drinking coffee like it was medicine, and existing in a state of controlled panic that felt almost normal. Roman noticed. Of course he noticed. "You're losing weight again," he said one evening, finding her in his office at midnight staring at spreadsheets she couldn't focus on. "I'm fine." "You're not eating." "I'm not hungry." "Lena, I'm fine, Roman, just busy. Your legitimate businesses don't run themselves." He studied her for a long moment. Then he closed his laptop and stood. "Come with me." "Where?" "Somewhere that isn't this office." He led her through the house to the library, a room she'd barely spent time in, 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling bookshelves surrounding leather chairs and a fireplace that actually worked. Roman started a fire, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, and handed her one. "Drink." Lena drank. The whiskey burned going down, warming her from the inside. They sat in silence for a while, just the crackling of the fire and the sound of waves crashing against the cliffs outside. Finally, Roman spoke. "My father used to bring me here when I was a kid. This was his favorite room in the whole estate. He'd sit right there." Roman gestured to the chair Lena was in, and he'd read for hours. History, philosophy, strategy. He believed that power without knowledge was just violence, that to really control something, you had to understand it completely. He took a drink. He was wrong, of course. Understanding doesn't stop bullets, but I think he needed to believe there was more to this life than just blood and money. "Do you believe that?" "Some days." He stared into the fire. "Other days I think he killed himself because he couldn't reconcile who he wanted to be with, who he actually was. And I wonder if I'm heading down the same path." "You're not your father." "No, I'm worse. He at least had limits, lines he wouldn't cross. I don't have those anymore. I crossed them all years ago and never looked back." Lena set down her glass. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to understand what you're really choosing. You think you know me. You've seen the violence, the planning, the cold calculations, but you haven't seen the worst parts yet. The parts that wake me up at night sweating and shaking, the parts that make me wonder if I'm even human anymore, or just a machine built for revenge." "What's the worst thing you've ever done?" Roman laughed, bitter and broken. "You want the full list, or just the highlights?" "I want the truth." "The truth?" He poured himself another drink. "The worst thing I ever did was torture a man for 3 days because I thought he'd betrayed my father. Kept him in the basement of this estate. Did things to him that I won't describe because you'd never look at me the same way again. And on the 3rd day, I found out he was innocent. Someone had framed him. And by then it was too late. He was already broken. So I put a bullet in his brain to end his suffering, and I buried him in a place where nobody would ever find him. And I've been living with that for 18 years. The fire crackled. Lena's hands were shaking. "His name was Michael Torres," Roman continued. "He was 29 years old. He had a sister who still puts up missing person posters every year, and I'm the reason she'll never have closure. That's who I am, Lena. That's what I'm capable of. So when you say you're choosing me, you need to understand exactly what you're choosing." Lena stood up and walked to where Roman sat. She knelt in front of him, taking his face in her hands, forcing him to look at her. "I'm choosing you," she said. "Not the sanitized version, not the version I wish you were. The real you, monster, murderer, whatever else you think you are. I see it, I understand it, and I'm still here. Roman's eyes were wet. Why? Because I love you. The words hung in the air between them, raw and terrifying, and absolutely true. You shouldn't, Roman whispered. Too late. He pulled her into his lap and held her like she was the only solid thing in a world that was constantly shifting beneath his feet. And Lena held him back, this broken, violent man who'd somehow become her entire world, and wondered when exactly she'd lost her mind. They stayed like that for hours, tangled together in front of the fire, until the sun started rising over the ocean and the house began to wake around them. Bulk. The betrayal came the next morning. Lena was in the kitchen making coffee when Marcus burst through the door, his face pale, his weapon drawn. We need to move. Now. What's happening? FBI's executing search warrants across all of Roman's properties. They'll be here in 10 minutes. Grab whatever you can't live without and get in the car. Where's Roman? Already gone. He left an hour ago, said to get you out before they arrived. Lena's brain was moving too slow, still fuzzy from lack of sleep and too much whiskey. The FBI has warrants? For what? Everything. RICO, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder. They've been building this for months and someone inside gave them enough evidence to move forward. We've got a leak, Lena, a big one. And whoever it is just handed the feds everything they need to tear down the entire organization. The world tilted. Who? Lena demanded. Who betrayed us? We don't know yet, but Roman's going to find out. And when he does, Marcus grabbed her arm. We need to go, now, before you get arrested as a material witness. Lena let him pull her toward the garage, her mind racing. A leak. Someone inside the organization feeding information to the FBI. Someone close enough to know about Roman's operations, his properties, his business dealings. Someone like... The realization hit her like cold water. Dante. It had been Dante all along. Dante who'd resented her from day one. Dante who'd questioned her loyalty constantly. Dante who'd tried to scare her away with that text message and the tour of Roman's war room. Not because he thought she was the leak, because he was trying to deflect suspicion away from himself. Marcus, stop. Lena pulled free. It's Dante. The leak is Dante. What? Think about it. He's had access to everything. He runs operations. He knows Roman's schedule, his properties, his business contacts, and he's been paranoid about security for weeks, not because he was worried about a traitor, but because he was covering his own ass. Marcus stared at her. You're sure? No, but I'm sure enough. Where is he, Tia? I don't know. He left the estate 2 hours ago. Said he had a meeting in the city. Call Roman, now. Marcus pulled out his phone just as the sound of vehicles reached them. Multiple cars, sirens wailing, tires screeching on the driveway. Too late, Marcus said. They're here. The front door exploded inward. Federal agents poured into the house like a flood. Tactical gear, assault rifles, shouting commands that echoed through the marble halls. Marcus grabbed Lena and pushed her behind him, his weapon up, his body between her and the threat. Marcus Torres, drop your weapon! Agent Reeves's voice cut through the chaos. Hands where I can see them, now! Marcus lowered his gun slowly and raised his hands. Agents surrounded them immediately, weapons trained, barking orders. Someone grabbed Lena and pushed her against the wall, hands yanking her arms behind her back, metal cuffs biting into her wrists. Lena Virelli, you're being detained as a material witness in a federal investigation, Agent Reeves said, appearing in front of her. You have the right to remain silent. It's Dante Morelli, Lena interrupted. Your informant, or your leak, whichever. It's Dante. He's been feeding you information for months. Reeves's expression didn't change. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You've been building a RICO case. You needed someone inside to make it stick. And Dante gave you everything in exchange for what? Immunity? Protection? A new identity? Miss Virelli, anything you say can and will be used against you. He's playing you! Lena's voice rose, desperation clawing at her throat. Whatever he told you, whatever evidence he provided, it's strategic. He's not trying to take down Roman's organization. He's trying to take over it. And you're helping him do it by removing Roman from the equation. Reeves leaned closer, her voice dropping. Or maybe Dante Morelli is a cooperating witness who finally grew a conscience and decided to do the right thing. Either way, by the end of today, Roman Calvetti is going to be in federal custody. and you're going to have to decide whether you want to go down with him or help yourself by cooperating. I'm not cooperating with anything. Then you're going to prison. Accessory to murder, conspiracy, money laundering. We have evidence placing you at the scene of multiple crimes. We have recordings of you coordinating shipments that we know contained illegal weapons. We have financial records showing you received payments from shell companies tied to organized crime. You're not an innocent bystander, Miss Virelli. You're a participant. And unless you start talking, you're going to spend the next 20 years in a federal prison cell. Terror flooded Lena's system, cold and absolute. This was it. The end game. The consequence she'd known was coming since the moment she signed Roman's contract. I want a lawyer, she said. Smart choice. Reeves nodded to the agents. Take her downtown, put her in holding until she's ready to cooperate. They dragged Lena out of the house she'd started thinking of as home, past the library where she'd told Roman she loved him just hours ago, through the front door where federal agents were tearing apart the estate looking for evidence. The last thing she saw before they pushed her into the back of a federal vehicle was the ocean, gray and endless under a sky that looked like it was morning. The holding cell was exactly what Lena had imagined. Concrete walls, metal bench, a toilet that didn't have a seat, the smell of industrial cleaner and human desperation. She sat on the bench and tried to process what had just happened. Roman was going to be arrested. His organization was being dismantled. And Dante, fucking Dante, had orchestrated the whole thing from the inside. But why? Power, obviously. With Roman in prison, someone needed to run the organization. And who better than his trusted lieutenant, the man who'd helped build the empire, who knew all the players and all the secrets? Dante wasn't betraying Roman. He was replacing him. And the FBI was too focused on taking down a major crime lord to realize they were being used as a weapon in an internal power struggle. Hours passed. No one came. No lawyer. No phone call. Just Lena alone with her thoughts and the growing certainty that she'd somehow ended up in the worst position possible, caught between federal prosecutors who wanted her testimony and a criminal organization that would view her arrest as proof of betrayal. Finally, the cell door opened. Agent Reeves stepped inside carrying a folder. Feeling more cooperative? I told you, I want a lawyer. You can have one, but before you lawyer up and stop talking, I thought you might want to see this. She opened the folder and pulled out a photograph. Recognize this man? Lena looked at the photo and felt her stomach drop. It was Roman. Coming out of a building she recognized as one of the Zanetti properties. And he wasn't alone. He was with Victor Zanetti himself. Shaking hands, smiling. This was taken 3 days ago, Reeves said. Secret meeting, no security, no witnesses, just Roman Calvetti and Victor Zanetti, the man he's supposedly been at war with, looking awfully friendly. So either your boyfriend has been lying to you about this whole gang war, or... She pulled out another photo. He's been lying to everyone. The second photo showed Roman and Victor sitting at a table in what looked like a restaurant's private dining room. Wine glasses, food, conversation that looked casual, almost cordial. We've been monitoring Zanetti for months, Reeves continued. And imagine our surprise when our surveillance caught Roman Calvetti, the man who supposedly wants Victor dead, meeting with him multiple times over the past 6 weeks. Right in the middle of this war that's killed 23 people. Lena's hands were shaking. You're lying. I wish I was. But the metadata's all there. Dates, times, locations. All during the same period when Roman was supposedly launching retaliatory strikes against the Zanetti organization. Reeves sat down beside her. Here's what I think happened. Roman and Victor realized they were both under federal investigation, so they staged a gang war to distract us, make it look like they were enemies, keep us focused on the violence instead of the money laundering and trafficking they were actually doing. All those people who died? Disposable. Sacrifices to maintain the illusion. No. Lena shook her head. Roman wouldn't kill his own men to protect his empire? Are you sure about that? Because from where I'm sitting, Roman Calvetti is exactly the kind of man who'd burn down half the city if it served his purposes. Reeves pushed the photos closer. He's been playing you, Lena, just like he's been playing everyone else. And unless you wake up and realize that, You're going to take the fall for crimes you didn't commit to protect a man who doesn't give a damn about you. The cell walls felt like they were closing in. Roman and Victor, meeting in secret. While people died in a war that might have been staged from the beginning, it couldn't be true, it couldn't. But what if it was? What if everything Roman had told her about his father's murder, about revenge, about justice, what if all of it was just another manipulation, another way to control her, use her, make her complicit in crimes she didn't fully understand? I need to think, Lena whispered. Think fast, because Roman's lawyer is already working on getting him released on bail. And the second he's out, he's going to tie up loose ends. People who know too much. People who've become liabilities. People like you. Reeves stood up. Cooperate with us. Tell us everything you know. We'll protect you. Put you in witness protection. Give you a new life somewhere Roman Calvetti can never find you. Or stay loyal to a man who's been lying to you since the moment you met, and see how that works out. She left, the cell door clanging shut behind her. Lena sat in the silence, staring at the photographs on the bench beside her. Roman and Victor, smiling, shaking hands, while 8 men burned to death in a warehouse, while 9 more died in coordinated attacks across the city, while Lena fell in love with a monster who might have been playing her from the very beginning. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Wait, they hadn't taken her phone? That was wrong. That was protocol violation, unless Lena pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from an unknown number. The photos are real. But not for the reason they told you. Meet me at the location below in 1 hour. Come alone. Trust no one. Especially not the FBI. D. An address in the warehouse district. Dante. Lena stared at the message, her mind spinning. The FBI had left her phone deliberately. They wanted her to lead them to something or someone. But Dante had information. Information that might explain those photographs. Might make sense of the chaos that was destroying everything Lena thought she understood. 1 hour. One choice. Trust the FBI agents who wanted to use her testimony to build their case. Or trust Dante, who might be a traitor, might be a rival, might be the only person in this entire nightmare who was actually telling the truth. Lena looked at the cell door. It wasn't locked. She could see that from here. The mechanism hadn't engaged properly. They were giving her a way out, a choice. And whichever choice she made would determine whether she survived what came next, or died trying. Lena walked out of the holding cell like she was walking through fire. The hallway was empty. Too empty. The kind of emptiness that screamed setup, trap, orchestrated chaos designed to look like opportunity. But she kept moving anyway, her heart hammering against her ribs hard enough to crack bone, her hands still shaking from the photographs Agent Reeves had left behind like grenades with the pins pulled. Roman and Victor, smiling, shaking hands. While people burned, the FBI field office was a maze of corridors and locked doors. But nobody stopped her. Not the agent typing at his desk who glanced up and then immediately away. Not the security guard who was suddenly very interested in his phone. Not the surveillance cameras that should have been tracking her every move but somehow weren't. They were letting her go, which meant they wanted to see where she'd run. Lena pushed through the front entrance into cold morning air that tasted like exhaust and regret. The warehouse district address Dante had sent was 40 minutes away by subway. She had maybe 30 minutes before the FBI mobilized whatever tracking operation they'd planned. She started running. But the warehouse was exactly the kind of place where people went to die. Abandoned, windows smashed out, graffiti covering every surface like the building itself was screaming. Located in a part of New Avalon where even cops didn't patrol after dark, where entire blocks had been surrendered to decay and whatever violence filled the vacuum. Lena approached from the east side, moving through shadows, every nerve ending on fire. The address Dante had sent corresponded to a loading dock with a rusted metal door hanging half off its hinges. She could see light inside. Movement. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Dante. Alone? Lena typed back. Yes. Good. Come inside. Second floor. Don't run. Don't run. Like she had anywhere left to run to. She slipped through the door into darkness, cut by shafts of weak sunlight filtering through holes in the ceiling. The warehouse floor was littered with debris. Broken pallets, shattered bottles, needles that crunched under her shoes. Stairs in the corner led up to what looked like old office space. Lena climbed slowly, each step creaking loud enough to wake the dead. The second floor was a single open room, empty except for a metal chair in the center and Dante leaning against the far wall with a cigarette and an expression that looked like he'd been expecting her. "You came," he said. "You said you had information." "I do." He gestured to the chair. "Sit." "I'm fine standing." "Sit the fuck down, Lena. We don't have much time before your FBI friends triangulate your phone and storm this place with enough firepower to level the block." Lena sat. Dante took a long drag, smoke curling from his mouth like something toxic escaping. "The photos they showed you, Roman and Victor meeting, they're real." "I know. But do you know why?" "Reeves said they staged the war, that it was all theater to distract federal investigators while they kept running their operations." Dante laughed. Actually laughed. Bitter and broken. "Is that what she said?" Jesus. The FBI really will believe anything if it fits their narrative. Then what's the truth? The truth is Roman's been negotiating, not a partnership, not a truce, a surrender. Dante flicked ash onto the concrete floor. Victor Zanetti didn't kill Roman's father. Roman's father killed himself because he found out what his own son was planning. Roman wasn't building an empire to honor his legacy. He was building an empire to replace him, to take everything Victor had built and burn it to the ground. And when Victor found out, when he realized just how dangerous Roman had become, he made a deal. Lena's chest tightened. What kind of deal? Roman gets out, completely out, leaves the city, leaves the organization, leaves everything behind. In exchange, Victor lets him live, lets his people live, ends the war before it destroys both families completely. Dante moved closer, and Lena could see the exhaustion carved into his face. Roman's been meeting with Victor because he's negotiating terms of his own exile, not because he's conspiring with him, because he's trying to protect what's left of his empire before Victor tears it apart. That doesn't make sense. Roman would never surrender, never walk away. Not for himself, no, but for you? Dante's eyes locked on hers. He'd burn the whole fucking world down to keep you safe. And Victor knows it. That's why he had you arrested. That's why the FBI showed you those photos. Because the easiest way to break Roman Calvetti is to make him think you've betrayed him. The room tilted. "The FBI didn't arrest me to get information," Lena said slowly. "They arrested me to send Roman a message. Now you're getting it." Dante crushed his cigarette under his heel. "Victor's got people inside the FBI. Has for years. He feeds them intelligence, they look the other way on certain operations. It's how this city really works. And when Victor decided it was time to end this war, he used those connections to orchestrate your arrest, to plant doubt in Roman's head about your loyalty, to make him desperate enough to accept terms that 6 months ago he would have laughed at." "Where is he? Where's Roman?" "Right now, in a federal holding cell same as you were. His lawyer's working on bail, but it's going to take hours. Maybe days. Which gives Victor exactly the window he needs." "For what?" Dante pulled a gun from his waistband and checked the chamber. "To kill everyone Roman loves while he's locked up and can't do anything about it, starting with you." Lena was on her feet before she'd consciously decided to move. "Victor's coming here?" "No. Victor's too smart to get his hands dirty. He's sending soldiers, probably already on their way. This warehouse, this meeting, it's a kill box, Lena. And you walked right into it. Then why did you bring me here? Why not just because I needed you away from FBI surveillance?" Dante tossed her the gun. "And because if we're going to survive the next hour, you need to be armed." Lena caught it reflexively, the metal cold and impossibly heavy in her hands. "I don't know how to use this." "Then learn fast. Safety's here. Point at what you want dead. Pull the trigger. Repeat until nothing's moving." He pulled a second weapon, this one bigger, meaner. "They're going to come through that door in about 5 minutes, maybe less. We can try to run, but they'll have the exits covered, so our options are fight or die." "This is insane. This is Roman's world. You wanted to be part of it. Congratulations. Now you get to find out what that actually means." Footsteps echoed from below. Multiple sets. Moving fast. Dante moved to the window and swore. "Make that 2 minutes. We've got at least 6, maybe more. Professional hitters, not street thugs. Victor sent his best." Lena's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the gun. We can't fight 6 trained killers. No, but we can make them work for it. Dante grabbed a metal beam and wedged it under the door handle. That'll slow them down. Maybe 30 seconds. Use the time to find cover and pray you're a better shot than you look. The first gunshot came before Lena could respond. It punched through the door with a crack that made her ears ring, the wood splintering, splinters flying. Then another, a full magazine emptying into the barrier between them and death. Dante returned fire through the wall, his gun roaring, muzzle flash lighting up the room in strobes. Move! Now! Lena dove behind an overturned desk as the door exploded inward, the metal beam clattering across the floor. Men poured through the opening, ski masks, tactical gear, weapons that looked like they belonged in a war zone. She counted 4 before she stopped counting and started shooting. The recoil nearly broke her wrist. The sound was impossibly loud, a physical thing that punched through her skull. But she kept pulling the trigger like Dante had said, pointing at shapes, at movement, at anything that looked like it wanted to kill her. One of the masked men went down. Then another. Dante was moving between cover points like he'd done this 1,000 times, firing in controlled bursts, hitting targets Lena couldn't even see through the smoke and chaos. Reload! He shouted. I don't have... He tossed her a magazine. She caught it, fumbled with the gun, somehow managed to eject the empty and slam the new one home. Muscle memory from movies, from video games, from a life she'd never actually lived but had somehow absorbed anyway. More gunfire. A window shattered behind her. Glass rained down like frozen rain. Someone was screaming. Lena realized it was her own voice, raw and animal, sound she didn't know she could make. Then silence. Ringing, smoke-filled, body-strewn silence. Dante moved through the carnage, checking bodies, kicking weapons away from twitching hands. 4 men down. Blood spreading across concrete in pools that looked black in the dim light. Is it over? Lena's voice didn't sound like hers. Not even close. Dante grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the stairs. That was the first wave, probing attack. They wanted to see what we had. Now they know. And they're going to come back with more. They made it down the stairs and into the warehouse floor when headlights cut through the broken windows. Multiple vehicles surrounding the building, doors opening, more shapes moving in the dark. Basement, Dante said. There's a service tunnel that connects to the building next door. If we can make it there. A bullet took him in the shoulder. He went down hard, his weapon skittering across the floor. Lena grabbed it without thinking, firing blind at the doorway where the shot had come from. The gun clicked empty after 3 rounds. Go! Dante gasped, blood spreading across his shirt. Tunnels through that door, 3 blocks east. There's a safe house. Code is 4792. Tell Roman... He coughed, red bubbling on his lips. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him Victor was right. Love makes you weak. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice. He pulled something from his jacket and pressed it into her hand. A phone. Not hers. Everything's on there. Evidence, recordings, proof of what Victor's been doing, what the FBI's been covering up. Get it to Roman. It's the only way to end this. More gunfire. Closer now. Lena ran. She didn't think. Didn't plan. Just ran through the basement door, down stairs that were more rot than wood, into darkness that smelled like mold and old death. The tunnel was exactly where Dante said. A concrete pipe barely tall enough to crouch in, water dripping from overhead, rats scattering as she stumbled through. Behind her, she heard the final gunshots. Dante's last stand, a man she'd hated for weeks dying to buy her time to escape. The tunnel seemed endless. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed. The phone in her hand was slick with sweat and maybe blood. She couldn't tell anymore, couldn't process the fact that she'd just killed people, that she'd just left someone to die, that her entire life had become a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The tunnel ended in another basement, this one abandoned, full of broken furniture and graffiti that looked like prayers to forgotten gods. Lena climbed out and found herself in an alley 3 blocks from the warehouse. Sirens in the distance, lots of them. The FBI finally mobilizing, or the police responding to reports of gunfire, or both. Lena looked at the phone Dante had given her. One unread message, address below, safe, trust Romans, D. And below that, an address in the financial district. She started walking, then running. Her clothes were filthy, torn, probably blood-stained. People stared as she passed, but nobody stopped her. This was New Avalon. You learn not to ask questions about women running through the streets looking like they'd survived a war, because maybe they had. The safe house was a penthouse apartment in a building so expensive the doorman didn't even blink at Lena's appearance. He just checked a list, nodded, and directed her to a private elevator that required a key card she found in the phone's case. The apartment was empty, sterile. The kind of place that existed only as a waypoint, a temporary shelter in a life built on constant movement. Lena collapsed on the couch and finally let herself break. She cried until her throat was raw, until her body was shaking so hard she thought she might fly apart, until the reality of what had just happened crashed over her in waves that threatened to drown her completely. She'd killed people, shot them, watched them fall, left Dante to die in a warehouse so she could escape. And for what? A phone full of evidence she didn't understand, a war she'd never wanted, a man who might have been lying to her from the beginning. Roman, God, Roman. Was he really negotiating surrender? Really planning to leave everything behind to protect her? Or was that just another layer of deception, another manipulation in a game where everyone lied and the truth was whatever served the moment? Lena pulled out the phone and started going through the files. What she found made her blood go cold. Recordings. Hundreds of them. Conversations between Victor Zanetti and people Lena recognized. City officials, police captains, federal agents, including Agent Sarah Reeves. Need Calvetti off the board permanently. I don't care how you do it. Arrest, exile, execution, just make it happen. Victor's voice, unmistakable. We're working on it. But Roman's smart. He's insulated. We need something that breaks his control. Reeves, clear as day. Then break him. Find his weakness. Exploit it. He's got a new girl, doesn't he? The assistant. Use her. How? Make him think she's betrayed him. Or make her actually betray him. I don't give a fuck which. Just make Roman Calvetti understand that he's lost. That fighting is pointless. That surrender is his only option. More recordings. More evidence. Proof that the FBI wasn't investigating Roman's organization to enforce the law. They were investigating it to help Victor Zanetti eliminate his competition. Lena felt sick. The entire system was corrupt. The people who were supposed to protect citizens were instead protecting criminals. And she'd almost cooperated with them. Almost given them testimony that would have helped Victor consolidate power while destroying the only man who'd been fighting against him. Her phone, her actual phone, not Dante's, buzzed in her pocket. She'd forgotten she even had it. A text from an unknown number. I know where you are. Stay there. I'm coming. R. Roman. He was out. He'd made bail somehow, and he was coming for her. Lena stood and moved to the window, looking out at the city spread below like a game board where she was a piece being moved by hands she couldn't see. 20 minutes later, she heard the elevator. She grabbed the gun. Jesus, she was still carrying the gun, and aimed it at the door. Roman stepped through, and the sight of him hit Lena like a physical blow. He looked wrecked, suit rumpled, jaw dark with stubble, eyes bloodshot and wild, but alive. Whole. Here. Put the gun down, Lena. She lowered it. How did you find you? Dante sent me the address before he died, along with everything else. Roman moved closer, and Lena could see the rage barely contained beneath his surface. I know what happened at the warehouse. I know Victor sent a kill team. I know you fought your way out. I know... His voice cracked. I know Dante saved you, gave his life so you could escape. I'm sorry. Don't. Don't apologize for surviving. He reached out like he wanted to touch her, then stopped, his hand falling. Are you hurt? No, terrified. But not hurt. Good. Because we don't have time for terror. Victor's escalating. He thought he could break me by having you arrested, by planting doubt, by making me desperate enough to surrender. But all he did was show me exactly how far he's willing to go. And now I know there's only one way this ends. What way? I kill him. Tonight. Before he kills anyone else I care about. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Roman, you can't. I can. I will. Victor Zanetti dies tonight, and his entire organization burns with him. That's the only way to keep you safe, to keep any of us safe. He pulled out his phone and showed her a message. My people have been tracking him. He's at his estate. Heavily guarded, but not impossible to reach. I'm going in with a strike team at midnight, and when it's over, either he's dead or I am. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You don't get to decide that. I'm in this now, all the way in. You said so yourself. So either I come with you or I follow you anyway. Those are your options. Roman stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. Sad and broken and full of something that looked like love. You're going to get yourself killed. Probably. But at least I'll die on my feet instead of hiding in a safe house waiting to find out if you made it back. I hate that I love you. The feeling's mutual. He kissed her then, hard and desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her mouth before everything went to hell. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Roman pressed his forehead to hers. If things go wrong tonight, they won't. If they do, I need you to know something. Everything I've done since the moment I met you has been to protect you. Every decision, every risk, every lie. It was all to keep you alive and safe and away from the worst parts of my world. But I failed. I brought you right into the center of it, and I'm sorry. Stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. This is my fault, all of it. Victor wants me dead because I threatened his empire. The FBI wants me in prison because I wouldn't cooperate with their corruption. Dante's dead because he chose loyalty over survival. And you're here, about to walk into a war zone because I was selfish enough to want you in my life instead of smart enough to let you go. Lena grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. I chose this. Every step of the way, I chose this. You gave me options. You warned me. You tried to protect me. But I chose to stay. Because I love you. Because I believe in what you're fighting for. Because someone needs to stand against people like Victor who think power means they can destroy anyone who gets in their way. So stop carrying guilt that isn't yours and start trusting that I know what I'm doing. Do you? Not even a little bit, but I'm doing it anyway. Roman laughed, actually laughed, broken and real. You're insane. I'm in love with a crime lord planning to assassinate his rival. Insane is the baseline. She picked up the gun. So what's the plan? The plan is we hit Victor's estate at midnight with 12 men, 3 entry points, suppressed weapons. We move fast, we move quiet, and we put a bullet in Victor's head before his security even knows we're there. And if his security does know we're there, then we fight our way through. And we keep fighting until either we're dead or he is. Roman moved to a closet and pulled out tactical gear, vests, weapons, ammunition. You'll stay with Marcus. He's commanding the North Entry team. Your job is to stay alive and provide backup if things get messy. Where will you be? Center Entry, going straight for Victor. He handed her a vest. Put this on. It's not bulletproof, but it'll stop most handgun rounds. If someone shoots at you, get behind cover. If someone comes at you with a knife, shoot them in the chest. Center mass. Don't aim for the head, you'll miss. Just keep firing until they stop moving. Lena strapped on the vest, the weight of it settling on her shoulders like responsibility. I'm scared. Good. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. He checked his weapon, the motion practiced and smooth. The people we're going up against tonight are professionals, trained, experienced. They've killed before and they'll kill again, so you don't hesitate, you don't second guess. Someone points a weapon at you, you put them down. Understand? Yes. Say it. I understand. Good. Roman pulled her close one more time, and Lena could feel his heartbeat against her chest, fast and strong and alive. No matter what happens tonight, I need you to know you're the best thing that ever happened to me. And if I don't make it, you're going to make it. If I don't, Marcus will get you out of the city. New identity, new life. Enough money to take care of your mother and yourself for the rest of your lives. You'll be safe. I don't want to be safe without you. I know. But promise me anyway. Promise me you'll survive this. Lena looked into his eyes and lied. I promise. Heck. They assembled at 11 p.m. in an abandoned parking garage 6 blocks from Victor's estate. 12 men plus Roman plus Lena. All of them armed. All of them silent. The kind of silence that came before violence, before chaos, before the moment when everything changed and you either walked away or you didn't. Marcus briefed the teams quietly, his voice low and controlled. North entry covers the service entrance. South entry takes the main gate. Center entry, Roman's team, goes through the east wall. There's a weak point in the security perimeter where the cameras overlap. 60-second window. We use it, we're in. After that, it's chaos management until we reach Victor. He'll be in the main house, second floor, probably his office. We neutralize anyone between us and him. No prisoners, no witnesses. We're ghosts, in and out before the police can respond. Ir suasiadsi bosens. And if the police are already there, one of the men asked, then we find out how many cops Victor actually owns. Marcus looked at Roman. Your call, boss. Roman's expression was stone. We proceed. Victor dies tonight. Everything else is secondary. They moved out at 11:40. The estate was exactly what Lena had expected. Walls, guards, cameras, everything designed to keep threats out and power protected. But Roman had been planning this for weeks, maybe months. He knew the patrol routes, the shift changes, the exact moment when security was weakest. They hit the wall at 11:58. Lena followed Marcus through a gap they'd cut in the fence, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone within a mile could hear it. The grounds were dark, landscaped gardens providing cover as they moved toward the service entrance. 2 guards stood by the door. Marcus took them both down with suppressed shots that sounded like air being released. The bodies dropped without a sound. Inside, Marcus whispered. Stay close. Stay quiet. And for fuck's sake, don't shoot unless you have a clear target. They moved through hallways that smelled like money and old power. Paintings on the walls worth more than Lena's entire life. Marble floors that reflected their shapes like ghosts. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear voices. Music. The normal sounds of a house that didn't know death was walking through its corridors. Marcus signaled to stop. Ahead, the hallway split. 3 guards visible, weapons drawn, clearly on alert. They know we're here, Marcus said quietly into his radio. All teams expect resistance. The response came back immediately. Roman's voice. Center team engaged. Multiple hostiles. Moving to secondary route. Then gunfire. Not suppressed. Full automatic. The sound of a war starting. The guards ahead of them spun toward the noise. Marcus used the distraction to drop 2 of them before they could react. The third got a shot off. It went wide, punching into the wall beside Lena's head, close enough that she felt the heat. She fired back. The guard went down. Lena stared at the body, at the spreading blood, at the life she'd just ended. Move! Marcus grabbed her arm and dragged her forward. They fought through the house room by room, more guards, more gunfire. Lena stopped counting shots, stopped thinking, just did what Marcus had taught her. Point, shoot, move, cover to cover. Stay low, stay alive. Somewhere above them she could hear explosions, screaming, the sound of Roman's team tearing through Victor's defenses like a hurricane. They reached the second floor just as the entire east wing exploded into flames. Jesus Christ, Marcus breathed. Roman, what the hell did you do? Static. Then Roman's voice, breathless and strained. Improvised. Keep moving. Victor's in the office. I'm 30 seconds out. Marcus and Lena ran toward the sound of Roman's voice. They found him in a hallway littered with bodies, his tactical vest torn, blood on his face, his weapon empty and discarded. Where is he? Lena demanded. Roman pointed to a door at the end of the hall. Solid oak, locked. In there. Barricaded. He knows it's over. Then we blow the door. No time, police are 3 minutes out, maybe less. Roman pulled a pistol from his ankle holster and checked the chamber. I'm going in through the window. You 2 cover the door. He tries to run. You put him down. Roman, no arguments. Not now. He moved to a window overlooking the courtyard and smashed it with his elbow. 3 minutes. If I'm not out by then, leave without me. He went through the window before Lena could protest. She and Marcus positioned themselves on either side of the door, weapons up, breathing hard. Inside, she could hear voices. Roman and Victor. The conversation muffled, but the tone unmistakable. Negotiation. Threat. The final moments before someone died. Then a single gunshot. The door opened. Roman stood there, smoke still curling from his pistol, his expression empty. Behind him, Victor Zanetti lay slumped in a leather chair, a neat hole in his forehead, his eyes still open and staring at nothing. It's done, Roman said. Let's go. They ran. Through the burning house, through hallways filling with smoke, through gardens where the remaining guards were either fleeing or fighting Roman's extraction team. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer every second. They made it to the vehicles just as the first police cars screamed through the gates. Marcus drove like a man possessed, weaving through streets, taking corners too fast, putting distance between them and the war zone they'd just created. Beside Lena, Roman sat silently, staring at his hands, at the blood that covered them, at the weight of what he'd just done. "Is it over?" Lena asked quietly. "No." Roman's voice was hollow. "It's just beginning. Victor's dead, but his organization won't collapse overnight. There'll be retaliation, power struggles, people trying to claim his territory, and the FBI will come after me harder than ever because I just murdered their asset in his own home." "So what do we do?" Roman finally looked at her, and the exhaustion in his eyes was absolute. "We survive. We adapt. We keep fighting, because that's all there is left." The car fell silent. Behind them, the sky over Victor's estate glowed orange with fire. And ahead of them, the city waited, dark and hungry and full of people who would want revenge for what had happened tonight. But for now, in this moment, they were alive. They were together. And Roman Calvetti had finally avenged his father. Even if it cost him everything, even if the war was just beginning, even if the only thing waiting at the end of all this violence, more blood, more impossible choices that would break them both before it was over. Lena reached out and took Roman's hand. He held on like she was the only thing keeping him from drowning. And maybe she was. Maybe they were both drowning. Maybe that's what love looked like in a world built on blood and power and the kind of darkness that never fully lifted. The car kept moving through the night, carrying them toward whatever came next, toward the consequences they couldn't avoid, toward the future they'd carved out with bullets and bodies and choices that couldn't be undone. And somewhere in the distance, sirens sang their endless song. The hunt had begun, and this time there would be nowhere left to hide. The safe house Marcus had chosen was a cabin 2 hours north of New Avalon, buried in woods so dense the sunlight barely reached the ground. No neighbors, no witnesses, just trees and silence and the kind of isolation that felt like the world had forgotten you existed. Which was exactly the point. Lena sat on the porch steps, watching dawn break over the forest, while Roman slept inside for the first time in 48 hours. His body had finally given up, collapsed into unconsciousness, born from exhaustion and blood loss, and the particular weight that came from killing a man with your own hands. She could still hear the gunshot, that single crack that had ended Victor Zanetti's life. Could still see Roman's empty expression when he'd walked out of that office. Something fundamental inside him changed forever. They'd watched the news coverage from the cabin's ancient television, grainy footage of Victor's estate burning, body counts rising, federal agents swarming the scene like carrion birds. 23 dead, including Victor. The mayor calling it the worst outbreak of gang violence in New Avalon's history. The FBI announcing a major investigation into organized crime networks. And Agent Sarah Reeves standing in front of cameras, lying through her teeth about cooperation and justice while carefully avoiding any mention of her own role in Victor's criminal empire. The recordings Dante had died to protect were still on that phone. Evidence that could bring down half the FBI's New Avalon field office. Proof that the system was rotten all the way through. Lena pulled it out now and stared at the screen. One call. That's all it would take. Send the files to the media, to the Justice Department in Washington, to anyone with the power to act on it. But then what? Roman would be exposed, his organization dismantled. The fragile peace he'd just bought with Victor's death would shatter into another war as everyone scrambled to claim the vacuum of power. And Lena would be painting a target on both their backs that would never disappear. The cabin door opened behind her. Roman stepped out, moving slowly, his torso wrapped in bandages where a bullet had grazed his ribs during the firefight. He sat beside her without a word, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You should be resting," Lena said. "I've been resting. Now I'm sitting with you." His voice was rough from disuse and smoke inhalation. "What are you thinking about?" "The recordings, whether we should release them." "And?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to burn it all down. Expose Reeves, expose everyone who helped Victor. Make them pay for Dante, for the 8 men who died in that warehouse, for every person who got caught in the crossfire of their corruption." She turned the phone over in her hands, but the other part knows that if we do that, we'll never be safe again. Every cop, every agent, every politician who's afraid of being named in those files, they'll come after us, and they won't stop until we're dead or in prison. Roman was quiet for a long moment, then, Dante told me something once. Years ago, when I was younger and still believed in things like justice and accountability. He said the difference between surviving and thriving in this world is knowing when to use your leverage and when to bury it. Survival means making the smart play. Thriving means making the play that lets you sleep at night. Which one are you? I used to be survival, did whatever it took to stay alive, stay powerful, stay ahead of the threats. But you... He looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. You make me want to thrive, to be better than just another criminal who got away with it because he was too dangerous to touch. So what do? We make copies, lots of them, encrypted, distributed to people we trust with instructions to release them if anything happens to us. Then we reach out to Reeves privately, let her know we have the evidence, that it's protected, that if she wants it to stay buried, she backs off. No more investigation, no more harassment. She forgets we exist, and we forget she's a corrupt federal agent who helped a crime lord murder his competition. Mutually assured destruction. The only kind of peace that lasts. Roman stood slowly, grimacing at the pain. Marcus is already working on it. By tomorrow, those files will be in 6 different locations with 6 different people who have zero connection to either of us. And then we'll have our leverage. And then what? We just go back to New Avalon and pretend none of this happened? No. We can't go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He moved to the porch railing, looking out at the forest. Victor's death created a power vacuum. Every family, every organization that's been waiting for an opening, they're going to make their move. The city's going to be a war zone for months, maybe years. And I can't protect you in the middle of that chaos. Lena stood and moved beside him. So where do we go? Anywhere. Everywhere. We've got resources, money, connections outside New Avalon. We disappear for a while. Let Marcus and the others hold the territory. Let the FBI and the police exhaust themselves chasing ghosts. And when things finally settle, when the new order establishes itself, we decide if we want to come back or start over somewhere else entirely. What about my mother? Already arranged. She's being transferred to a private facility in Vermont. Best care available. Round-the-clock nursing. And completely disconnected from anything that could lead back to us. She'll be safe. I promise you that. Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes. You thought of everything. I had time. 12 hours in a holding cell gives you a lot of time to plan for contingencies. Roman turned to face her fully. But there's one thing I can't plan for. One choice that's entirely yours. You can come with me. Disappear into a life that's going to be complicated and dangerous and full of looking over our shoulders. Or you can take the out I'm offering. New identity. Enough money to live comfortably anywhere in the world. Protection from anyone who might come looking. You walk away from this, from me, from everything, and you get to have a normal life. The kind you deserved before I dragged you into my world. You're giving me a choice. I'm giving you freedom. Real freedom. Not the gilded cage version I've been selling you for months. He reached out and took her hand, his grip gentle. I love you, Lena. Which means I need you to choose this for yourself. Not because you're desperate. Not because you feel obligated. Not because you're afraid of what happens if you leave. But because you actually want this life. Want me. Want whatever future we can build together, knowing it's going to be hard and messy and probably shorter than either of us would like. Lena looked at this man who'd saved her mother, who'd given her purpose, who'd shown her a world where power and violence and love were so tangled together they couldn't be separated. This man who'd killed for her, who'd almost died for her, who was offering her an escape even though it would destroy him to watch her take it. I choose you, she said. I choose this. Whatever it looks like, however hard it gets. I'm in, all the way. Roman's expression cracked, relief and grief and love all mixing together until he looked almost young again, almost like the person he might have been if violence hadn't shaped every part of his life. He kissed her there on the porch of a cabin in the middle of nowhere, slow and deep and tasting like goodbye to the people they used to be. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Roman pressed his forehead to hers. No more secrets, he said. No more lies. Whatever happens from here, we face it together. Deal? Deal. They went inside and started planning their disappearance. Checks. Marcus arrived that afternoon with documentation, passports, credit cards, complete identities that had never existed until yesterday. The infrastructure of vanishing built by people who'd been doing this for generations. Michael and Sarah Chen, Marcus said, handing them the passports. Married 3 years. He's a software consultant. She's a freelance designer. No criminal history. No red flags. You could walk through any airport in the world and nobody would look twice. Roman flipped through the passport, studying his new face staring back from the photo. Where did you get these? Better you don't know. Let's just say I called in every favor I had left. Marcus pulled out a tablet and brought up a map. I've got 3 routes planned. Option 1, private plane to Montreal, then commercial flight to Prague. Option 2, drive to Mexico, fly to Buenos Aires. Option 3, boat to the Bahamas, then wherever the hell you want from there. Each route has safe houses, contacts, and enough cash to keep you comfortable for 6 months. After that, you're on your own. The organization, Roman asked. Locked down. I'm running day-to-day operations with Vincent overseeing financial. We've already reached out to the other families, established new territories, negotiated truces. It's fragile, but it'll hold long enough for the heat to die down. And Reeves? Got your message. She's agreed to the terms. No more investigation into Calvetti operations in exchange for the recording staying buried. She's scared, boss. She knows what those files would do to her career, her life. She'll hold up her end. Good. Roman set down the passport. What about the people we lost? The families? Everyone's been taken care of. Death benefits, college funds for the kids, medical coverage for life. Nobody gets left behind. Marcus's jaw tightened. Dante's sister got a payment too, anonymous, enough to cover her expenses for the next decade. I told her he died a hero, that he saved lives. She deserves to know that much. The cabin fell quiet. Dante. The man who'd hated Lena, who'd questioned her loyalty, who'd died in a warehouse buying her time to escape. The man who'd been Roman's friend, his soldier, his brother in everything but blood. I should have protected him better, Roman said quietly. He wouldn't have wanted protection. He wanted to go out fighting, and he did, on his terms for someone he cared about. Marcus looked at Lena. He told me before the warehouse, said if things went sideways, make sure you knew he was wrong about you, that you were stronger than he gave you credit for, that Roman was lucky to have found you. Lena's throat closed up. He said that? Word for word. He died believing you'd survive. Don't make him wrong about that. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Marcus stood and clapped Roman on the shoulder. You've got 48 hours before this place becomes too hot to use. I'd recommend option 1, Montreal to Prague. We've got good people there. They'll help you settle in, establish new routines. After that, you're free. Thank you, Marcus. For everything. Don't thank me. Just stay alive. And maybe check in once a year so I know you're not dead in a ditch somewhere. I can do that. Marcus left the way he'd come, quickly, quietly, leaving no trace he'd ever been there. Roman and Lena spent the rest of the day preparing, burning old documents, memorizing new identities, running through contingency plans for every scenario Marcus had outlined. It felt surreal, like they were rehearsing for a play they'd never actually perform. But this was real. This was happening. In 48 hours, Lena Virelli and Roman Calvetti would cease to exist, and Michael and Sarah Chen would board a plane to Montreal, leaving behind a city soaked in blood and a war that had consumed everything they'd touched. That night, unable to sleep, Lena called her mother. The phone rang 3 times before the nurse answered. Mrs. Patterson speaking? It's Lena. Is my mother available? Oh, honey, of course. Let me get her for you. Shuffling sounds, then her mother's voice, stronger than it had been in years. Baby? It's late. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Mom. I just wanted to hear your voice. You sound different. Are you crying? No, just tired. Lena wiped her eyes. How are you feeling? Good. Really good, actually. Dr. Chen said the latest scans show significant improvement. The tumors are shrinking. They're talking about remission, Lena. Actual remission. Her mother's voice cracked. I don't know what you did to arrange all this, what deal you made, but you saved my life, baby. You saved me. The guilt hit like a fist to the chest. I'm glad you're getting better, Mom. When can you visit? The nurses said you've been busy with work, but I miss you. I want to see you. Soon, I promise. I just have some things I need to take care of first, but I'll come see you as soon as I can. You're in trouble, aren't you? The question was so direct it took Lena's breath away. What makes you say that? Because I'm your mother. I know when you're lying. I know when you're scared, and I can hear it in your voice right now. So tell me the truth. Are you in danger? Lena closed her eyes. I was. But I'm not anymore. I'm safe. I promise. And this job? This employer who's paying for my treatment? Is he keeping you safe? Yes. Do you love him? The question shouldn't have surprised her, but it did. How did you, I can hear it, the way your voice changes when you talk about your work. That's not employee loyalty. That's something else. Something deeper. Her mother paused. Is he good to you? He's complicated, dangerous. He's done terrible things, and he'll probably do more. But yes, he's good to me. He saved me the same way I'm trying to save you. Then hold on to him. Life's too short to waste time on people who don't make you feel alive. Another pause. But Lena, if you're running from something, if you need to disappear for a while, I understand. You do what you need to do to stay safe. I'll be here when you're ready to come back. Tears were streaming down Lena's face now. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. So much. And I'm proud of you. Whatever choices you've made, whatever you've had to do, I'm proud of you for surviving, for fighting, for not giving up even when it would have been easier. They talked for another hour. About nothing. About everything. About memories from before cancer, before poverty, before the world had gotten so complicated. And when they finally said goodbye, Lena felt something inside her settle. Her mother was going to live. That's what mattered. Everything else, the violence, the lies, the blood. It was all worth it for that one simple truth. Roman found her on the porch again, staring at the stars through gaps in the trees. He sat beside her and pulled her close, and they stayed like that until the sun started rising. Two people who'd survived a war watching the world wake up around them. They left for Montreal at dawn. The drive to the airport was quiet, both of them lost in thoughts about the life they were leaving behind. Marcus had arranged everything, tickets under their new names, luggage packed with clothes they'd never worn, a complete history they'd have to remember perfectly if anyone asked questions. At the airport, they moved through security like ghosts. Michael Chen, the software consultant. Sarah Chen, the freelance designer. Just another married couple traveling for work. Nothing unusual, nothing worth remembering. The plane was half empty. They sat in the back, Roman by the window, Lena in the middle seat with her hand in his. As the engines roared and the ground fell away beneath them, Lena watched New Avalon shrink into the distance, a sprawl of glass and concrete and secrets that would continue spinning without them. Somewhere down there, Agent Reeves was destroying evidence. Marcus was consolidating power. Families were mourning the dead. And the city was slowly, painfully, putting itself back together after the war that had torn it apart. But up here, 30,000 feet above all that chaos, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. Roman squeezed her hand. You okay? Yeah, I think I am. Any regrets? She thought about it, really thought about it. Only that more people didn't make it out. Dante, the men at the warehouse, everyone who died because Victor and the FBI decided power was worth more than lives. They would have died in this world eventually. We all do. The only difference is how long we last and whether we die for something that matters. Did they die for something that matters? They died protecting family, protecting each other. In our world, that's the only thing that ever matters. Roman looked out the window at clouds that looked like snow. The rest of it, the money, the territory, the power, it's all just noise. What matters is who you're willing to bleed for, who you're willing to die for. And everyone we lost understood that. The plane leveled out. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Lena leaned her head on Roman's shoulder and closed her eyes. What happens when we get to Prague? We find an apartment, set up new routines, learn to be Michael and Sarah Chen until it feels natural. Maybe I'll actually learn software consulting. Maybe you'll actually try your hand at design. And then we live. We wake up every morning and we choose each other. We build something that doesn't require violence to maintain. We figure out what normal looks like for two people who've never been normal a day in their lives. That sounds impossible. Probably is, but we've survived impossible before. We can do it again. Lena smiled against his shoulder. You're an optimist now? I'm realistic. I know we're probably going to fail at normal. I know we're going to fight and struggle and make mistakes. I know there'll be days when we miss the adrenaline, the power, the feeling of being untouchable. But I also know I'd rather fail at building something real with you than succeed at anything else without you. The words settled over Lena like a blanket. Warm, safe, true. She fell asleep somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, dreaming of a city she'd never seen and a life she'd never imagined. A life where she wasn't drowning in debt or watching her mother die or serving champagne to people who didn't know she existed. A life where she was just Sarah Chen, wife, designer, someone ordinary, someone free. Itig. Prague was everything Montreal wasn't. Old, beautiful, complicated in ways that had nothing to do with crime and everything to do with history, layered on history until you couldn't tell where one era ended and another began. Their apartment was in Vinority, a neighborhood Marcus's contact had described as quiet but not isolated. 3 rooms, high ceilings, windows overlooking a courtyard where old women fed pigeons and children played soccer. They moved in slowly, learning the rhythms of their new life. Roman, Michael, took online courses in software development and actually seemed to enjoy it. Lena, Sarah, started building a portfolio of design work, reaching out to small businesses that needed branding, finding purpose in creation instead of destruction. They learned Czech in evening classes taught by a patient woman named Petra, who never asked why 2 Americans were so interested in integration. They found a cafe that made coffee the way they liked it. They discovered a park where they could walk for hours without seeing another soul. And slowly, impossibly, they began to heal. The nightmares didn't stop immediately. Roman still woke up, sometimes gasping, reaching for weapons that weren't there, fighting enemies that existed only in memory. Lena still flinched at loud noises, still saw blood on her hands when she closed her eyes. But they faced it together, held each other through the dark hours, reminded each other they were safe, that the war was over, that they'd survived. 6 months after leaving New Avalon, Lena's mother came to visit. She looked healthy, strong. The cancer in full remission, her body slowly remembering what it felt like to not be at war with itself. She stayed for 2 weeks, and in that time she never once asked about Roman's past, or what had happened in New Avalon, or why they were living under different names in a foreign country. She just accepted it, the same way she'd accepted everything else in Lena's complicated life. On her last night, she and Lena sat on the apartment balcony drinking wine, while Roman cooked dinner inside. "He's good for you," her mother said quietly. "I can see it. The way you look at him, the way he looks at you. That's the real thing, baby. Kind of love people write songs about. He's a complicated man, Mom. All the good ones are. Your father was complicated too. Different kind of complicated, but still. What matters is whether he makes you happy. Whether he makes you feel like the best version of yourself. Does he?" Lena thought about it. About how Roman had given her power when she'd felt powerless. How he'd shown her she was capable of more than she'd ever imagined. For better and worse. How he'd stood beside her through hell and never once asked her to be anything other than exactly who she was. "Yeah," she said. "He does. Then that's all that matters." Her mother reached over and squeezed her hand. "You saved my life, Lena. Not just by arranging the treatment, but by showing me that fighting is worth it, that surviving is worth it, that even when everything seems impossible, there's always a reason to keep going. You gave me that, and I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful." They cried together on that balcony, mother and daughter, survivors of different kinds of wars. And when Roman came out to tell them dinner was ready, he took one look at their faces and simply sat down beside them, becoming part of their moment without needing to understand it completely. That was love, Lena realized. Not the grand gestures or the violence or the dramatic sacrifices, just showing up, being present, choosing someone every single day, even when it would be easier not to. A year after leaving New Avalon, Marcus sent a message through their secure channel. City stabilized. New order established. Reeves retired early, citing personal reasons. Your names never came up in any investigation. You're clear. If you want to come home, the door's open. If not, we'll keep things running. Either way, you're family. Always will be. Roman and Lena read the message together in the cafe that had become their regular spot. We could go back, Roman said. Reclaim our lives. Run the organization properly instead of letting Marcus handle everything. We could, Lena agreed. Or we could stay. Build on what we've started here. See what normal actually looks like when we're not constantly looking over our shoulders. What do you want? Lena looked around the cafe, at the old man reading his newspaper in the corner, at the young couple arguing over their laptop, at the barista who knew their order by heart. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, none of them aware that two of New Avalon's most wanted were sitting right there among them. I want this, she said. I want to wake up every morning without wondering if today's the day someone comes for revenge. I want to build something that doesn't require violence to protect. I want to be Sarah Chen, designer, wife, normal person, at least for a while longer. Roman smiled, actually smiled, warm and genuine. Then that's what we'll do. He sent a reply to Marcus, stay the course, we're home. Because home wasn't a city or an organization or an empire built on blood. Home was wherever they chose to be together. And they'd chosen Prague. 2 years after leaving New Avalon, on a gray winter afternoon that reminded Lena of the night they'd met, Roman came home from his consulting job and found her sitting at their kitchen table with a small box. What's that? He asked, setting down his bag. Open it. Inside was a ring, simple silver band, no diamonds, no ostentation, just a circle of metal that meant everything. Roman stared at it for a long moment, then at Lena. Are you asking you to marry me? Yes. For real this time. Not as part of a cover identity. Not as a strategic move just because I love you and I want to spend whatever time we have left making that official. We're already married, on paper. Michael and Sarah Chen tied the knot 3 years ago, remember? That was a lie we told to disappear. I'm asking for the truth, for us, for a ceremony that actually means something instead of just being part of an identity we purchased. Roman sat down across from her, and Lena could see him struggling with the enormity of what she was asking. In their world, their real world, the one they'd left behind, marriage was leverage, a tactical alliance, a contract with benefits and consequences all measured in power and territory. But this wasn't that world anymore. This was different. I'm not a good man, Lena. We both know that. I've killed people, ordered others killed, built an empire on suffering and fear. And even here, even trying to be normal, I'm still that person underneath. I'm still capable of violence if someone threatens you, still capable of doing terrible things if it means keeping you safe. I know. I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm asking you to choose me, officially, permanently, to stand in front of whatever version of witnesses we can find and say that you're mine and I'm yours and nothing else matters. Roman picked up the ring and turned it over in his fingers. Where would we even do this? We can't go back to New Avalon, can't risk any public ceremony that might expose our real identities. We do it here, small, private. Just us, and maybe Petra from our Czech class because she's the closest thing we have to a friend. We say the words that matter, we exchange rings, we make it real. And then what? Then nothing changes. We keep being Michael and Sarah Chen, we keep building this life. But we do it knowing we chose each other, officially, in the way that counts. Roman slipped the ring onto his finger. It fit perfectly. I'm going to ruin this. I'm going to have nightmares that wake you up at 3 a.m. I'm going to see threats that aren't there. I'm going to struggle with being normal because I've never been normal a day in my life. I know. And you still want this? I want you, all of you, the parts that are broken, the parts that are dangerous, the parts that are trying so hard to be better than what you were. I want every version of you that exists. So yes, I still want this. He stood up and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. Yes. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you, for real, in whatever ceremony we can arrange. Because you're right, I've chosen you every day for 2 years, might as well make it official. They were married 3 weeks later in a small office by a Czech official who spoke exactly 11 words of English. Petra was there as their witness, beaming like a proud grandmother, even though she had no idea who they really were or what they'd survived to get to this moment. Lena wore a simple white dress she'd bought from a vintage shop. Roman wore the same suit he'd worn to leave New Avalon, now altered to fit his slightly different frame. They exchanged rings and vows in broken Czech that probably weren't grammatically correct but felt true anyway. And when the official pronounced them married, when Roman kissed her in that dusty office with afternoon light streaming through unwashed windows, Lena felt something click into place. This was real. This was home. This was what they'd fought for, what they'd bled for, what they'd survived impossible odds to reach. Not power, not revenge, not empire. Just this. Two people choosing each other against a world that had tried everything to keep them apart. 3 years after leaving New Avalon, Lena got a call from Dr. Chen. Her mother had passed away peacefully in her sleep. No pain, no suffering, just her body finally deciding it had fought enough, had survived enough, had earned its rest. Lena and Roman flew back to Vermont for the funeral. Small service. Few mourners. A woman who'd spent her life being invisible finally getting to rest without anyone demanding anything from her. At the graveside, Lena stood between Roman and the life her mother had lived and thought about all the choices that had led here. The desperation that had driven her to accept Roman's offer, the violence that had followed, the war they'd barely survived. And she thought about what her mother had said on that balcony in Prague, that fighting was worth it, that surviving was worth it, that even when everything seemed impossible, there was always a reason to keep going. Her mother had fought cancer for 5 years and won, had lived to see her daughter safe, happy, loved. That was enough. That was everything. "She was proud of you," Roman said quietly as they walked back to the car. "I could see it every time she looked at you. She knew what you'd sacrificed to save her, and she was grateful. I'd do it again. Every terrible choice, every impossible decision, all of it, if it meant she got those extra years. I know you would. That's why I love you." They drove back to the airport in silence, heading back to Prague, back to their small apartment and their ordinary lives and the future they were still building one day at a time. But before they boarded the plane, Lena pulled out her phone and looked one more time at the news from New Avalon. The city had moved on. New faces in power, new organizations claiming territory. The war between the Calvettis and Zanettis already fading into legend. Another story in a city built on stories of violence and survival. Agent Reeves had disappeared completely. No retirement announcement, no forwarding address, just gone. Probably somewhere under her own new identity, running from the consequences of her choices the same way Lena and Roman had run from theirs. And Marcus, faithful, solid Marcus, had sent one final update through their secure channel. Organization stable. Territory secure. Nobody's looking for ghosts anymore. You're free. Actually free. Live your lives. Be happy. And maybe name a kid after me if you ever have one. Lena showed Roman the message. He smiled and typed back, "We'll think about it." Then he deleted the entire conversation thread, cutting the last thread connecting them to New Avalon and everything they'd been before. They boarded the plane as Michael and Sarah Chen. No history, no empire, no blood on their hands except in memories that grew fainter with every passing year. Just two people who'd survived the impossible and come out the other side, still breathing, still choosing each other, still fighting to be better than what the world had tried to make them. But 5 years after leaving New Avalon, on a spring morning that smelled like rain and new beginnings, Lena stood in the bathroom of their Prague apartment staring at a pregnancy test showing 2 pink lines. She was terrified. She was overjoyed. She was completely unprepared for this next chapter in a story she'd thought was already fully written. Roman found her there 20 minutes later, still staring at the test like it might change its answer if she looked long enough. "Is that? Yes. Are we? Yes." He sat down on the bathroom floor beside her, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Just processed the reality that their quiet life was about to become exponentially more complicated. "I don't know how to be a father," Roman said finally. "I don't know how to raise a child in a normal way. I don't know how to protect them from becoming what I was." "Then we figure it out together, the same way we figured out everything else." Lena took his hand. "We teach them to be strong, but kind. to fight for what matters but know when to walk away, to understand that survival sometimes requires hard choices, but that doesn't mean we become defined by those choices. We give them what neither of us had: safety, stability, love that doesn't come with conditions or consequences. What if I fail? What if I can't leave the past behind enough to be what they need? Then we fail together, and we try again, and we keep trying until we get it right, because that's what parents do. They show up, they keep fighting, they love their kids even when everything else is falling apart. Roman pulled her close, and Lena could feel him shaking, not from fear, from the overwhelming weight of responsibility settling onto shoulders that had carried empires but had never carried something this precious. Boy or girl, he said against her hair. They're going to be so loved, so protected. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure they never have to make the choices we made, never have to see the things we saw, never have to sacrifice pieces of themselves to survive. I know you will. And if anyone ever tries to hurt them, then we remind them why Michael and Sarah Chen are people you don't fuck with. He laughed through tears. We're going to be terrible at normal, aren't we? Absolutely. But we'll be terrible together, and somehow that makes it okay. Their daughter was born 6 months later on a snowy December evening that reminded Roman of the night he'd first met Lena on that balcony in New Avalon. They named her Sophia, after no one, for no reason except that the name meant wisdom, and they hoped she'd grow up wiser than her parents, better than the world that had forged them. Lena held her in the hospital room, this tiny, perfect thing they'd created, and thought about all the violence and chaos and impossible choices that had led to this moment. Everything they'd survived, everyone they'd lost, all the blood and fear and desperate battles just to stay alive. And somehow it had brought them here, to this room, to this child, to this second chance at becoming people who deserved the peace they'd fought so hard to find. Roman sat beside them, his finger gently gripped by Sophia's impossibly small hand, and Lena saw something in his expression she'd never seen before. Complete peace. No ghosts, no guilt, no weight of empire or revenge or all the terrible things he'd done to get here. Just a father looking at his daughter and seeing possibility instead of violence, seeing the future instead of the past. She's perfect, he whispered. She is. We're going to protect her no matter what. I know. And love her more than anything in this world. I know that too. Sophia yawned, tiny and pink and completely unaware that her parents were reformed criminals who'd left a war zone to build her a life free from their sins. And maybe that was the point. Maybe redemption wasn't about erasing the past or pretending you'd never done terrible things. Maybe it was about building something better with whatever time you had left, about choosing love over violence, about protecting innocence instead of destroying it, about being the kind of people who deserved the second chances they'd been given. Lena looked at Roman over their daughter's head and saw her own thoughts reflected in his eyes. They'd survived New Avalon. They'd survived the war. They'd survived everything the world had thrown at them. And now they'd build something worth all that survival. A family. A home. A life that proved you could come back from the darkness and still find light. Sophia fell asleep in Lena's arms while Roman held them both, his body a wall between his family and anything that might threaten them. Outside, snow fell over Prague in silence, covering the city in white, making everything clean and new. And inside that hospital room, 3 people who'd found each other against impossible odds breathed together in the quiet, their hearts beating in sync, their futures uncertain, but their present absolutely perfect. Because this was what they'd fought for. This was what all the blood and sacrifice and terrible choices had been building toward. Not power, not revenge, not empire. Just this: love, family, peace. The kind of ending that felt like a beginning. The kind of redemption that was earned through survival and choice, and refusing to let the past define the future. Roman Calvetti and Lena Virelli were dead. Michael and Sarah Chen lived. And Sophia, beautiful, innocent Sophia, would grow up never knowing the war her parents had survived to give her a world where war wasn't necessary. That was the legacy. That was the victory. That was everything. And as Lena drifted off to sleep with her family surrounding her, she thought about that night on the balcony so many years ago when a desperate server had met a dangerous man and made a choice that changed both their lives forever. She'd been drowning then, suffocating under the weight of poverty and fear, and watching someone she loved slowly die. And Roman had offered her a lifeline, a dangerous one, a complicated one that came with blood and violence and impossible costs. But she'd taken it anyway, and somehow, impossibly, it had led her here, to safety, to love, to a second chance at the life she'd thought she'd lost forever. The rain outside sounded like forgiveness, and for the first time in 5 years, Lena stopped looking over her shoulder. The war was over. They'd won. Not through violence or revenge or maintaining power, but through survival, through choice, through loving each other enough to become better than what the world had tried to make them. And that was worth everything they'd sacrificed to get here. Every drop of blood, every impossible choice, every person they'd lost along the way. It was worth it, all of it, because they were finally, impossibly, home.